Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. If this trend continues, is there going to be anything left in California? Now, California is known for its deserts, but it seems as though if this continues, California is going to be known as a barren wasteland. It's getting to a point where anti-California rhetoric is going from hyperbole to accurate. In the past, a hyperbolic statement when it comes to California's business environment might be something like it's impossible to run a business in California, where of course largely that would be an exaggeration. It's not impossible, it's just not as convenient as other states. Not as much of a business-friendly environment that you might enjoy, but a statement like that is going from hyperbolic political rhetoric to it seems as though it's literally impossible to run a business in the state of California these days. Alright, so I got some stuff to show you guys today, but before we get into any of it, this video is actually brought to you guys by a sponsor, so let's go ahead and roll that clip. Alright friends, so you guys are aware that inflation is absolutely through the roof, the worst that it's been in nearly 40 years since the Jimmy Carter era. Prices of pretty much everything from basic goods to the price at the pump. Of course, the housing market is completely out of control, and speaking of out of control, as this current administration continues to print and spend trillions upon trillions of dollars, the US national debt is ballooning to staggering numbers. So the question is, how do you protect your money? How do you protect your retirement and your savings? Well, during turbulent times, Americans like to turn to real physical assets like gold and silver. And American Hartford Gold can show you how to hedge your hard-earned savings against inflation by helping you diversify a portion of your portfolio into physical gold and silver. And it's totally easy. All you gotta do is give them a quick phone call, and they'll have physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside your IRA or 401k. It's really that easy, and the best part is, if you call them right now, they'll give you up to $1,500 of free silver on your first order. So don't wait and call them now at 844-440-1005. Again, that's 844-440-1005, or text HiveMind to 65532. Again, that's HiveMind to 65532. A huge thank you to American Hartford Gold, who continue to help you dodge that Biden bullet. And now let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so take a look at this headline. Top Union Pacific official blasts far-left policies over spiraling crisis of rail theft, threatens to leave Los Angeles. Last week, a viral video showed how thieves are pillaging through shipping containers in the infamous Logan Heights neighborhood. Tens of thousands of destroyed packages litter the area around the rail tracks. An individual on Twitter tweets out, "Keep hearing of train burglaries in LA on the scanner, so went to #Lincoln Heights to see it all. And there's looted packages as far as the eye can see. Amazon packages, UPS boxes, unused coof tests, fishing lures, EpiPens, cargo containers left busted open on trains."
Unopened.
Adrian Guerrero, General Director of Public Affairs, sent a letter to Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon, demanding his office stop the spiraling crisis of organized and opportunistic criminal rail theft. Shockingly, Guerrero revealed that over 90 containers are compromised per day. Since December 2020, UP has experienced an over 160% increase in criminal rail theft in Los Angeles County. In several months during that period, the increase from the previous year surpassed 200%, and in October 2021 alone, the increase was 356% compared to October 2020. Guerrero explained that not only do these dramatic increases represent retail product thefts, they include increased assaults and armed robberies of UP employees performing their duties moving trains. However, the actual crimes are not the only issue. Guerrero explained that far-left criminal justice policies have exacerbated the problem and emboldened criminals. Criminals are caught and arrested, turned over to local authorities for booking, arraigned before the local courts, charges are reduced to a misdemeanor or petty offense, and the criminal is released after paying a normal fine. These individuals are generally caught and released back onto the streets in less than 24 hours. Even with all the arrests made, the no-cash bail policy and extended time frame for suspects to appear in court is causing re-victimization to UP by these same criminals. In fact, criminals boast to our officers that charges will be pled down to simple trespassing, which bears no serious consequence. Without any judicial deterrence or consequence, it is no surprise that over the past year, UP has has witnessed the significant increase in criminal rail theft described above. According to Guerrero, UPS and FedEx, which utilize Union Pacific's rail services, are seeking to divert their business away from Los Angeles County, and Union Pacific may join them. Like our customers, UP is now contemplating serious changes to our operation plans to avoid Los Angeles County, Guerrero wrote, adding that such a drastic change would significantly impact the national supply chain. Guerrero went on to say that Union Pacific understands the well-intended social justice goals of Gascon, but demanded that he hold these criminals accountable. And so once again, bleeding heart liberals hurt everything more than they help. I mean, absolutely crazy, and absolutely spot on from Guerrero, who seems to point out the exact same things that we have been focused on. Cases of theft and armed robbery being dropped down to misdemeanors and trespassing charges, immediately released right back onto the streets in less than 24 hours to reoffend, and he even cites no cash bail reforms as being another culprit. And now, just as he stated, if Union Pacific is now to divert around Los Angeles County, not only would that affect California, not only would that affect Los Angeles, but the fact that Los Angeles is probably the biggest supply chain hub for the whole country, or one of, that could cause a ripple effect once again down the supply chain, hurting the entire nation. In the midst of a supply chain crisis coming off of the COOF pandemic and Joe Biden's illegal mandates, Los Angeles has a responsibility to help make the problem better, but instead, they're actively sabotaging the country's supply chain with their out-of-control, far-left, progressive nonsense, incompetence. And I am done hearing apologist arguments. People saying, well, it's not Joe Biden's fault, it's not the Democrats' fault, relating to the supply chain crisis or the inflation crisis. It's happening all over the world because of left-wing globalist politicians, just like Joe Biden, and just like the DNC represents. Or arguments that crime is spiking because of the COOF-19, or any other ridiculous argument. No, it is happening directly due to left-wing policies. I'm not hearing any of it, and I'm so strong on that stance that I will even criticize Donald Trump during the early days of the COOF pandemic for siding with this lockdown lunacy and welfare payment insanity. But even though Donald Trump gave into it at the time, mainly due to political pressure and the fact that it was uncharted territory, nobody really knew what was going on when it came to the pandemic. But after more than 2 years of experience, after all the data and seeing the harm that's being done to the middle class, at least Republican politicians have shifted. Democrats continue to make matters worse when it comes to the supply chain and inflation. They continue with their fiscal insanity, and they continue with their progressive insanity that's adding fuel to the fire and adding another crisis to the list. And California is the home of all of it. Draconian COOF measures and lockdowns, destroying small business, out of your mind liberal policies decriminalizing crime, as paradoxical as that sounds, and then all compounded with the basic Democrat policies that govern the state and the city, burdensome regulation and taxes that make it hard enough as it is to maintain a business, to maintain your livelihood. If this stuff continues unchallenged, California may be governing itself into extinction, into utter irrelevance, as people and companies continue to flee to Texas and Florida. A 356% increase in train thefts, with constant reoffenders who are bragging about just getting misdemeanor trespassing charges, and Los Angeles and San Francisco city councils are doing nothing. First it was Walgreens closing down 17 California stores, and next is Union Pacific claiming that they're going to have to divert Los Angeles County as a whole. What an absolute policy disaster the state of California continues to be. But of course, that's what I got for you. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. I don't know about you guys, but I am getting so sick of all of these double standards. You know, the left continues to cry about white male privilege, this and that, but it seems as though nowadays the race that seems to be the least privileged, at least in terms of media coverage, is of course the white male. It's just as Ibram X. Kendi says, to fight discrimination with, of course, discrimination. And the most recent hostage event at a Texas synagogue really shows exactly what I'm talking about. We're gonna go there once again. If it was a white male, well then what do you think the headlines would be? We'd be hearing from every single talking head on MSNBC just how dangerous Trumpism continues to be. It's Donald Trump's fault, the extremism, the increased threat of white supremacy, and the Trump supporter in January 6th insurrection, right-wing domestic terrorism, all right, this, that, and the other. But instead, of course, we get what you'd expect, another Islamic terrorist targeting the Jewish community, and we hear nothing but crickets. They barely cover it. And of course, most egregious of all, not only do they barely cover it, but it seems as though they were actively trying to cover it up. And once again, the only thing that gets them to finally admit the truth is public pressure. Even the FBI. The FBI is so willing to label Trump supporters as domestic terrorists, whether it's the Proud Boys who have no history of violence whatsoever or any extremist views and are constantly under attack from actual left-wing terrorists, or whether it's parents of young school children who don't want their children indoctrinated with CRT nonsense. The FBI is so quick to label them as domestic terrorists, but in this case an Islamic extremist who shouldn't have even been in the US in the first place targets a synagogue, and they give him the benefit of the doubt. Well, we don't know, folks. We need all the facts. We can't exactly say why a Muslim man would take hostages in a synagogue. Absolutely stupid. Let me show you guys all of the nonsense that's going on here, and let's continue to expose this horrific double standard. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so for those of you that are completely out of the loop and not following any of this stuff, the TLDR, the too long didn't read synopsis, is that a Muslim man who came from the UK, by the way with a criminal record, took multiple hostages at a Texas synagogue, and after hours of hostage negotiations, well, let's just say the man didn't get out of it alive. And after the events, the FBI came out with a public statement saying this.
We do believe from our engagement with this subject that he was singularly focused on one issue, and it was not specifically related to the Jewish community, but we're continuing to work to find motive, and we will continue on that path. In terms of the resolution of the incident, the hostage taker is deceased.
Now, it's one thing to say we're not going to speculate and we don't know what's going on here. It's another to essentially declare that the situation was not specifically related to the Jewish community. Individuals at a Texas synagogue got taken hostage. Oh, but it didn't really have anything to do with the Jewish community. But they release a statement, a public statement to the press, that it had nothing to do with the Jewish community. That's just wacko. And of course, the FBI was then blasted. It seems as though, once again, people on Twitter somehow have better information and more intel than the FBI. And no tweets, FBI seems very poorly informed to say that at this point, considering the suspect demanded the release of Muslim sister, Afia Sadiqli. She is a convicted jihadi who is so anti-Semitic that she demanded jurors for her trial be DNA tested to exclude Jewish people. Christina Summers writes, he was seeking the release of a virulent anti-Semite and convicted terrorist, Aissa Sadiqli. She blamed Jews for everything. Likely he did too. Harry Hoffman writes, so an Islamic terrorist who took Jewish hostages at a synagogue on the Jewish Shabbat in order to release an anti-Semitic terrorist was not connected to the Jewish community. Give me a break. Do you guys believe your own BS? And it goes on and on and on, with even Joe Biden coming out and saying this.
Do you know why he targeted that specific synagogue?
Well, no, I don't. We don't have. I don't think there is sufficient information to know about why he targeted that synagogue, why he insisted on the release of someone who's been in prison for over 10 years, why he was engaged, why he was using anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli comments. We just don't have enough facts.
That there isn't sufficient information to know why that he targeted the synagogue. Lefties on Twitter then immediately pushing Islamophobia to the top of the Twitter trending tab, as if there isn't sufficient information already. Absolutely stupid. And of course, immediately, like clockwork, breaking after outcry, FBI admits the Jewish community was targeted in synagogue hostage taking. This is a terrorism-related matter in which the Jewish community was targeted and is being investigated by the Joint Terrorism Task Force. How was that not immediately assumed? Well, I'll tell you, it's once again this woke nonsense that continues to corrupt everything left-wingers get their hands on. Oh, we can't jump to conclusions. We might be profiling, it might just be Islamophobia, irrational fear, when it's clearly none of that. What it is basic common sense putting two and two together. There really could not have been any other explanation. Well, I mean, there could have been, but there's really only one conclusion to jump to. There's really only one explanation that makes sense, given the information. But instead, left-wingers would rather virtue signal and continuously give the benefit of the doubt. Well, it seems as though they give the benefit of the doubt to pretty much anybody who's not a white male. A Muslim extremist commits a horrible act and left-wingers in the media, well, they don't want to jump to conclusions, even giving the benefit of the doubt, as well as the FBI. But then a perceived white man in Boulder, Colorado commits one of the worst atrocities in decades, and the media jumps on him as a perceived white male. For those of you guys that remember, this was his face. Then, of course, his identity comes out, and what was his name? Ahmad al-Aliwi Alisa. Not exactly a Connor Smith, who spends too much time at Trump rallies, and then all of a sudden, the media ignores the incident. This precious left-wing narrative that the white man is the greatest threat to democracy and national security is such a farce, it's totally manufactured. Such a ridiculous narrative, but so precious to these disingenuous Democrats that somehow white supremacy is still to blame. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel suggests that white supremacy is to blame for Texas synagogue Islamist attack.
We have seen an incredible rise in rhetoric that is anti-Semitic being trafficked all around the country. And in the case of Michigan, that is why I established the first hate crimes and domestic terrorism unit anywhere in the state, one of the first in the country, because we were seeing an exponential rise in hate crimes and an exponential rise in the formation and the membership of these extremist organizations, many of which are white supremacy organizations, and they traffic in hatred against Jews and other minorities.
I mean, we're talking about clear Islamic radicalism. But Michigan's Attorney General, Dana Nessel, is brought on to speak on MSNBC and immediately takes the conversation towards this boogeyman of white supremacy that doesn't even exist. Or maybe it exists, but it's so small, it's so insignificant, it's so exaggerated and manufactured that the only way it even stays alive is by connecting incidents like this that have nothing to do with it with this imaginary threat of extremist white nationals. I mean, this incident happened in Texas. Why is the Michigan Attorney General even speaking about what's going on in Texas? She has absolutely no connection to it whatsoever, no relevant information to bring, other than to push this completely phony, ridiculous left-wing media narrative. The double standard is so horrific, these people are so dishonest, that the word Islamic extremism can't even come out of their mouths. Even when it's clearly the elephant in the room, they immediately go to, but more white supremacy. It's just ridiculous. In the very, very rare scenarios where there is an act of white radicalism, I mean, it's so rare I literally can't even think of a single situation off the top of my head. But during those times, here's another complete double standard, it is immediately condemned by all sides. Of course, the media will blow it up and try to connect it to Donald Trump and right-wing blah blah blah, you know the deal. But in the much more often incident of left-wing radicalism, Islamic extremism, or other similar instances, well, it seems as though the media tries to cover it up. And then you have this ridiculous notion of Islamophobia being pushed around, that the real threat isn't the extremism, but rather the prejudice against Muslim people that follows. And every single time, the individuals who commit these acts somehow at the end of the day become victims. Man claiming to be the brother of Texas synagogue terrorist says suspect freed hostages before being shot. And although my brother was suffering from mental health issues, we were confident that he would not harm the hostages. So somehow he's the victim, and federal agents dealing with the hostage situation are supposed to give the individual the benefit of the doubt that he's not going to harm anyone. Absolutely crazy. We're even seeing reports of a Facebook Muslim community that's now mourning the individual's death. And all I have to say is that if that same thing was happening during a true instance of white extremism, well, the outrage would be tremendous. It happens in these instances, and nobody even seems to talk about it or care. It's completely despicable. And now we're even learning that the family of the individual, Malik Faisal, is now asking how he was even able to enter the US with a criminal record. How did he get in? And if that doesn't add more to the argument of why border security is so important, then I don't know what does. All I have to say to end this video is, we are truly living in a clown world, now aren't we? That's what I got for you guys though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. And just like that, folks, that is exactly how you deal with cancel culture, especially when it's an orchestrated media mob trying to take down their biggest competitor with such a disingenuous attack. The phony mainstream media's quest to take down Joe Rogan never ceases to amaze and continues to fail, with their most recent attack on Spotify, well, being completely ignored by Spotify. And that is exactly how you deal with these media loons in cancel culture. There are two rules when it comes to cancel culture. A, never, and I mean never, apologize. If the left-wing mob is trying to cancel you for doing something that isn't even wrong, never give in to the outrage. And B, you're probably better off just completely ignoring it, and big corporations need to understand this. That the news cycle moves so incredibly quickly that the Twitter mob is representing a very small minority of people. It's not your consumer base, it's not the real world. And that in the end, most likely you're going to get more support by actually standing up for yourself, and in this case, standing up for your creators, instead of giving in to the left-wing authoritarian pitchfork mob and their disingenuous cancel culture campaigns. The media has been pushing a story for the last couple of days that frankly I didn't even know existed, which once again proves that literally nobody cares about this stuff and companies should just ignore it. But they've been covering a story that 270 doctors are pressuring Spotify to cancel Joe Rogan or to censor Joe Rogan. And well, let's just say this campaign isn't working. The campaign is also, well, excuse my French, full of shit. Let me show you guys what's going on here, but before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers, and with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so these are the kinds of stories that I'm talking about right over here. Rolling Stone, quote, a menace to public health, which was released on the 12th of January, 6 days ago from when this video is going to get released. Once again, most people don't even know that this stuff exists. Doctors demand Spotify puts an end to the coof lies on the Joe Rogan Experience. And wow, I mean, that must be real serious. 270 doctors pressuring Spotify to cancel Joe Rogan. And of course, coming from the dishonest media that's been going after Joe Rogan for a couple years now, using nothing but lies and deceit. Well, I mean, there must not be any holes or any twists or any surprises here, right? 270 doctors. Give me a break. Media claims that 270 doctors demanded Spotify to take action over Joe Rogan podcasts. Turns out, most of them aren't even medical doctors.
Happy Feast of Winterman.
Wow, what a surprise. The media last week widely circulated an open letter to Spotify, allegedly co-signed by 270 doctors that demanded the company take action against podcast host Joe Rogan. But it turns out that the majority of those signatories cannot legally practice medicine on their own. The letter demanded that Spotify implement a misinformation policy once again. Democrats invoking the thought police, these absolute loons. The letter voiced anger over a recent podcast of the Joe Rogan Experience with Dr. Malone, a virologist and immunologist who has been censored by social media companies for disseminating a perspective of the COVID-19 jab that contradicts the government's narrative. The letter claimed that Joe Rogan had a concerning history of broadcasting misinformation about the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, the media put out these headlines right over here. The Guardian, menace to public health, 270 doctors criticize Spotify over Joe Rogan's podcast. Forbes writes, doctors, scientists petition Spotify to stop the Joe Rogan Experience COVID-19 misinformation. The Rolling Stone headline that I showed you guys, the New York Post, Joe Rogan is a menace to public health, 270 doctors and experts tell Spotify. But of course, upon further inspection, the range of credentials among the signatories include 82 medical doctors, MDs, 5 doctors of osteopathic medicine, DO, more than 12 nurse practitioners, nearly 100 PhDs and PhD candidates, most of whom are professors, registered nurses, veterinarians, a dentist, a psychologist, physician's assistants, a biochemist, master's students, research associates, pharmacists, a laboratory supervisor, medical students, public health advisors, teachers, engineers, social workers, and even a podcast host. Wow, definitely a credible bunch. Kind of interesting, considering the individual that they're trying to censor, not Joe Rogan in this case, but Dr. Malone, is more qualified to speak on the subject matter than any of the people who are calling for his censorship. I'm just astonished where we are as a society. Aaron Rodgers said very recently that if science can't be questioned, then it's not science, it's propaganda. So aptly said and just perfect for the time. How did Western civilization get to this point, friends? I'm just gonna break it down in layman terms. I'm gonna tell you lefties how I really feel. Of course, it's gonna be a little bit difficult because I'd really like to cuss here, but I have to hold myself back. Can you snowflakes just please take a hike? I don't care if you can't handle an opposing opinion. Joe Rogan and anybody who is on his podcast are entitled to their beliefs and their perspectives. They can come to whatever conclusions they want to based on the data that they analyze and the information that they have access to. And if you want to live in a censorious, top-down, autocratic, communist dictatorship, well then you can pack your bags and head straight to North Korea or head straight to the CCP. How about that? It's basically that simple. And it's not even about arguing what was said. You know, the Rolling Stone goes into Jessica Malati Rivera, who's an infectious disease epidemiologist and research fellow at Boston Children's Hospital, who debunks health misinformation on Instagram. So they bring in an Instagram expert who literally doesn't even debunk a single thing that was said on the podcast. They state that she debunked mass formation psychosis. How can you debunk a philosophical concept? I mean, who are you, God? But it's not even about who's right and who's wrong, whether or not Dr. Fauci is science or not. It's about the core concepts, the core pillars about what makes this society great. And lefties each and every single day are trying to destroy society. The closer and closer they move towards authoritarianism. I don't care if you can't handle opposing opinions. That's not a me problem, that's a you problem. And you can keep that to yourself and on your Twitter feed. You can keep that in your progressive bubble. This idea that whatever the mainstream narrative is cannot be questioned, is uncorruptible, it's the gospel of science, is completely ludicrous. Science is literally built off peer review. It starts off with a hypothesis, a theory, which is then proved through experiment, and then peer reviewed and scrutinized. And these lefties act as if the mainstream narrative and what governing bodies have been saying has been right all along. They haven't had a misstep. I mean, talk about a load of BS. The amount of times the narrative has shifted, the amount of wrong information that has been pushed out there by authoritative sources and authoritative entities just continues to prove my point that a healthy discussion and opposing viewpoints is probably exactly what we need right now. The last thing we need is for another social media company to create another council on misinformation filled with a bunch of partisan corporatist shills that continue to corrupt the process. People are entitled to their beliefs, and if you can't handle it, well then maybe just get off the internet or something. And the beauty of it all, the crescendo ending, Spotify is now under fire. I mean, I'm looking around, I literally don't see any fire outrage, but okay, the media said it, so it must be true. Amid silence on misinformation from podcast star Joe Rogan, it's been nearly a week since this campaign against Joe Rogan and Spotify has started, and Spotify hasn't even addressed it. And when it comes to that, I tip my hat off, and I say, good on you, Spotify. That's pretty much the perfect response to another media-manufactured, faux outrage, disingenuous hit-piece propaganda campaign. Joe Rogan and his guests are entitled to their beliefs, and the consumers and the listeners are entitled to listen to what they want to, and to make their own decisions based on their own analysis and their own research as to what is true and what isn't, what is best for them and their families. We don't need the thought police. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe. I'm gonna get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. So the speculation is, the rumor is, the insider reports are that Joy Ann Reid and MSNBC is going to be losing her show. And so it might come to mind that with Joy Ann leaving the show, will the craziness leave with her? Of course, it's a rhetorical question. You guys already know the answer. Of course not. Just like when you take out the kingpin, thinking you're bringing down the organization, another person is always there to fill the void. And it's the same thing at MSNBC. Who needs Joy Ann Reid when you got MSNBC's contributor Jason Johnson, who is arguably on a whole other level of crazy? Now, for the most part, this guy's been quite irrelevant, so he hasn't been making headlines, but recently he's been much more active. In a certain way, he's become the face of MSNBC's social justice activist segments, and I can probably only describe as a vile racist figure who says some of the most ridiculous partisan nonsense. And of course, it probably doesn't help that he's pretty much wrong about everything when it comes to his analysis. Well, MSNBC's new golden boy, Jason Johnson, has found his new shtick of calling Republicans a terrorist organization on pretty much a nightly basis, because of course Joe Biden comparing you to segregationists and racists of the past, well, that didn't go far enough. So Jason Johnson's taking it to a whole other level. Let's take a look at what he has to say, and then let's of course go into why he is completely wrong, and frankly off of his rocker. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, take a look at this right over here from Breitbart. MSNBC's Jason Johnson: GOP is a front for a terrorist movement like the PLO to Hamas.
Here's the problem, though. We don't know if Trump's going to be on the ballot. If Trump is on the ballot in 2024, it's the easiest thing in the world for Democrats, because you can always run against the bad guy. But I think that the bigger, more dangerous thing, and I've been saying this for a while, I'm working hard to never say Republican Party again, because they're not a party. Right? They're Sinn Féin to the IRA, they're the PLO to Hamas. They're a dime store front for a terrorist movement. They didn't have a policy in 2020 except loyalty to Trump. They just announced in the New York Times today, I think I saw the article, where they're asking their 2024 nominees to not engage in presidential debates. They're no longer a party. And so nothing surprises me anymore. When it's essentially a personality cult, when there's no difference between supporting Trump and being part of a Britney supporter or the Bayhive or something else like that, what do you expect them to do? Everything is going to change every single 5 minutes depending on the whims of the deplatformed guy who's hiding out and blogging in Florida right now.
I mean, how ridiculous is that? He was asked what he thought whether or not Donald Trump would be on the ballot in 2024, and instead of even answering the question properly, he sticks so well to his narrative and goes straight into this ridiculous nonsense about the Republican Party being the PLO to Hamas, the Sinn Féin to the IRA. They're a dime storefront for a terrorist movement. How absolutely ridiculous. Then goes on to say that they didn't have any policy to propose in 2020 except loyalty to Trump. Again, how monumentally dishonest. You know, that's probably one of the most clear distinctions between the two presidencies that we're experiencing. Joe Biden had a policy platform. Once getting elected to office, he did none of it. Donald Trump had a policy platform, and he worked his rear off to pass every single element of it. When it comes to border security and the border wall, deregulation, tax cuts, holding foreign countries accountable for them to pay their fair share instead of relying on the American military, becoming energy independent, getting rid of NAFTA, signing into law the USMCA, canceling the Iran nuclear deal and putting sanctions on them, holding China accountable. The list goes on and on and on. Donald Trump delivered on so much, and then even did extra by brokering peace deals in the Middle East. And then on top of it, doing more for the African American and Latino community than 3 Democrat presidents combined, with a new plan called the Platinum Plan for Black America, planning to invest $500 billion in black entrepreneurship and black communities, which is $500 billion more than Joe Biden, and is one whole plan more than Joe Biden, because Joe Biden doesn't have a plan. I mean, it's such a great distraction. The reality is, Donald Trump actually had policies. The reality is, voting for Donald Trump is the opposite of a cult or a personality cult. It's voting for actual results. And that's why these ridiculous media figures play these stupid games in order to distract away from the facts. Don't look at the results, don't look at the policies, don't look at the economy or all of the accomplishments. Ooh, spooky terrorist organization. Be very, very scared and vote for a geriatric, poopy pants old man. And Jason Johnson is an expert on this nonsensical fear-mongering. Here he is on Twitter the other day: the GOP is no longer a governing party, and news outlets should stop using that term. They have given up all pretense of being part of a democratic process and only exist as a vehicle to restore Trump to power through violence or malfeasance. And of course, why is he saying this? Because the Commission on Presidential Debates is currently trying to figure out whether there's going to be debates or not in the first place. Why? Because Donald Trump is leading the pack by like 60 percentage points. What's the point of having a nomination process if it's pretty much a given that Donald Trump's going to win? Now, of course, I don't necessarily agree with this. I think there should be debates and there should be a nomination process, especially because I want to see Donald Trump on the debate stage next to Jeb Bush, and over the weeks see Jeb Bush move further and further and further and further to the end until he falls off, just like in 2015. But I mean, clearly there's a logic to what the RNC is doing here. Clearly it makes sense. But Jason Johnson, it's just proof that the RNC is a personality cult, headed towards autocracy with an authoritarian leader, rising to power through violence and malfeasance. They're the set fine to the IRA. It's just a dime store front to a terrorist movement. I mean, no wonder people are just tuning out from this nonsense. You know, MSNBC is telling you one thing, projecting this alternate reality, and most people remember what it was like to have Donald Trump as a president. It wasn't that long ago. If we're talking about authoritarianism, if we're talking about unconstitutional illegal actions, well, I'm pretty sure people are thinking that Joe Biden and the Democrats are much closer to autocracy, much closer to what you'd expect from a communist dictatorship than Donald Trump ever was. You know, the narrative is so ridiculous. You know, Donald Trump was president for 4 years and all they did was claim that he acted unconstitutionally, the abuse of power. They can't name a single example. Name one time that Donald Trump and his administration tried to find a workaround around the Constitution to enact illegal and unconstitutional mandates or anything on the American people. Donald Trump, of course, fought for the exact opposite. He fought for freedom of the individual. Donald Trump was the victim of a shadow coup from the DNC. They spied on his campaign and tried to unseat him as president through falsified evidence and phony impeachments. They were literally trying to put him in jail, and the entire time Donald Trump not once did he attempt to pervert the legal process. He could have done so many things. He could have been out of line. He could have abused his power, but instead he took a step back, recused himself from any investigations, and was very patient for all of the truth to come out, which of course John Durham continues to release. But the American people watching MSNBC are supposed to believe that he's an authoritarian dictator, hell-bent on power, leading a terrorist movement. You're a Looney Tunes character. You're not living in reality. These people on MSNBC have completely lost their minds. And the contrast, the hypocrisy is just completely ridiculous as they continue to fearmonger about right-wing extremism. Well, hey, who remembers the other year? Well, of course, it's very fresh in our memory. Mr. 100% Antifa assassinating a Trump supporter on the streets of Portland. About a year ago, a left-wing Nation of Islam member driving his car into two Capitol police officers, taking the life of one. The BLM rapper who drove his car through a Christmas parade in Waukesha a couple weeks ago, or I guess a little bit over a month ago. The Antifa member with a bag full of explosives looking to do harm to Trump supporters during a rally to support January 6 political prisoners, which we covered a couple days ago. And now, suspect in deadly East Harlem Burger King shooting of woman demands reparations for slavery and promises America is gonna burn. At one point, Glenn, who is black, can be heard ranting, "Where's our reparations for 400 years of effing slavery?" Another left-wing extremism who senselessly took the life of a Burger King employee. They continue to point the finger the other way, but the truth isn't even a point that can be argued anymore. These left-wing fanatics are completely out of control. They're getting more violent. They're enabled by the media. Frankly, they're motivated by the media and this constant fear-mongering, and people like Jason Johnson at MSNBC, and I just hope that people can wake up and see what's really going on here. And unfortunately, I think the Democrats and the left-wing media have started a fire. They've lit the fire, they've poured fuel on the flames, and I think left-wing extremism is going to get worse before it gets better. I don't think they have enough water to put the fire out, and I don't think we've even begun to see the true damage that they've caused. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm gonna get back to work though. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, here we go again, covering one of the greatest downfalls in YouTube history. Now, it's not a downfall in terms of subscribers or views, this individual's career crumbling to nothingness. It's more so a figure who used to be frankly widely revered, someone who was at the top of the YouTube game, going down the woke propaganda bubble and becoming one of the most insufferable Twitter weirdos on the planet. Of course, we are talking none other than Ethan Klein, a man who continues to get involved in politics despite his complete ignorance on all of the subject matter, and a man who continues to make himself look like an absolute fool in every single instance, whether it's going after Steven Crowder, going after Joe Rogan, or this time, going after Jordan B. Peterson in an attempt to label him as a gateway to the alt-right. It's almost like we've teleported back in time to 2017, where supposedly Ben Shapiro was the gateway to the alt-right for young children on YouTube. You know, the deeply religious conservative Jewish man? Somehow he was a gateway to becoming a neo-Nazi. But this time, as Ethan Klein is promoting on his Twitter account, Jordan Peterson, a man who tells you to clean your own room and take responsibility to become a responsible man and leader of your community, that guy is somehow a gateway gateway to the alt-right, and his voice should be censored from the masses. I mean, what an absolute buffoon Ethan Klein has become. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here, but of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned, but the YouTube algorithm is hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so just to preface this video, it's very important to understand that Ethan Klein is just such a better human being than you are, and he really wants everyone on his Twitter feed to understand that. A couple days ago, he tweets, "Years ago, I interviewed Jordan Peterson before I was familiar with his politics." Very interesting statement considering Ethan Klein is still not familiar with politics in general. As we've covered in previous videos, his absolute ignorance on all of the subject matter that he preaches on. He was an interesting guest who I enjoyed sitting with, but especially now, I can see that he's a dangerous gateway to the alt-right, transphobia, and COVID misinfo. I removed both interviews today. And now, of course, right off the bat, a little bit paradoxical, claiming Jordan Peterson was a very interesting guest that he enjoyed sitting with, but now all of a sudden, Jordan Peterson is a dangerous gateway to the alt-right and transphobia and coof misinfo. And of course, he states this without any real proof whatsoever. Somehow Jordan Peterson is a transphobe, even though he completely supports the rights of trans people. But he's a transphobe because he fought the Canadian government on a particular issue that had absolutely nothing to do with trans rights. What Jordan Peterson was fighting was Bill C-16, which mandated the use of preferred pronouns by law. Government-mandated speech was the issue that Jordan Peterson had. He didn't have a phobia of trans individuals, but of course Ethan Klein can't make the distinction. Then he goes on to say coof misinfo, most likely because Jordan Peterson has an issue with the mandate itself. To mandate a medical procedure, once again government overreach, creating a new underclass of the unjabbed who aren't allowed to participate in regular society due to their medical choices. Somehow, believing that the government shouldn't police speech and shouldn't be fining people for getting someone's pronouns wrong or not wanting to adhere to someone's pronouns, somehow that makes you all right. Disagreeing with medical tyranny, not supporting a government that discriminates against individuals based on what they choose to put in their own body. Apparently to Ethan Klein makes you alt-right. It makes you a dangerous gateway to the alt-right. And Ethan felt so deeply that he needed to delete the video with Jordan Peterson to save the world from the dangerous influence that Jordan Peterson might have. I mean, absolutely nuts. It could honestly be argued that Ethan Klein, during the 2014-2015 YouTube era, was more of a gateway to radical politics than Jordan Peterson ever was. Jordan Peterson tells you to get your life together, to work hard, to be honest, to make your bed, to not blame others for your shortcomings, but to rather strive forward. Somehow that's alt-right, but Ethan Klein, who jumped on the whole anti-feminism, anti-SJW trend from back in the day, well, he's somehow the saint in this whole situation. A man who literally profited off anti-wokeism has now gone completely, utterly out of his mind woke. But I really have a hard time thinking that it's genuine whatsoever. It seems more to align with Ethan Klein just constantly virtue signaling to appease the corporate overlords at YouTube. I mean, it doesn't seem genuine to me that he would take down a Jordan Peterson interview from years ago while leaving up his podcast with iDubbbz, where they regularly use the N-word as well as the anti-LGBT F-word. Somehow that's acceptable to woke Ethan Klein. But Jordan Peterson, I mean, that's just not okay. Ethan just seems like another miserable left-wing SJW Twitter type, some sort of deep-seated negativity that lives inside of him that manifests itself in self-righteous virtue signaling wokeism. He's trying to brand himself as so much better than you, Ethan Klein saving the world. I mean, at this point, Ethan Klein is basically the Pope, but of course that couldn't be further from reality. What it really is Ethan Klein just being hateful, bigoted, and filled with vitriolic rage. Jordan Peterson's daughter, Michaela Peterson, retweets Ethan and writes, "Thank goodness at H3H3 Productions is out here saving the world from dangerous people, like her father Jordan B. Peterson." To which any human being would have probably not even responded, "Why get into petty Twitter beefs?" But of course, Ethan Klein, as thin-skinned as he is, responds with, "How is fleecing your father's fandom going? $100 per month for the Lion Club, teaching people that eating only meat cures all ailments? Must have been nice to be posting cute selfies from your father's social media accounts. I mean, just so hateful, such rage. First of all, Michaela Peterson isn't teaching people that eating only meat cures all ailments. She had a serious autoimmune disorder from what I understand, and a specific diet has helped her, and so she just talks about her story. But the way Ethan will twist and manufacture things and claim that she was using her father's social media accounts when he nearly died, when of course he has absolutely no idea what was going on in their family, just goes to show how petty and frankly how disgusting he is. The quartering tweets, Jordan Peterson is no more a gateway to the alt-right than you are, Ethan. Deleting your interviews is truly a new low. Exactly how many alt-right members are there, Ethan? Do you have any idea? To which he responds, how do I convince my husband that him pissing on the floor is not okay and he needs to be responsible for it? The quartering, from what I understand, the quartering has IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and he told a funny story that he's not even ashamed of whatsoever on one of his YouTube channels, that he got extremely drunk and peed on the floor in his basement, and so anytime he receives any criticism from the quartering, Ethan Klein responds with, ha ha ha, you peed on the floor. It's ridiculous, it's childish, it's absolutely stupid. Ethan Klein is a pseudo-intellectual with absolutely no knowledge on any of these issues, any of the subject matter that he preaches on. Like I would say, we have proved it in the past. He has a severe misunderstanding, a lack of understanding when it comes to any of these issues, but he sees what's playing out in the press with Joe Rogan and Jordan B. Peterson as vilified figures, and he joins in with the mainstream corporate goons, most likely as a genuflect to his corporate mainstream overlords. Please don't cancel me, I'm on the right side, I swear. But what it really is a miserable, angry, loathsome, vile figure who has fallen so far from grace and is not contributing anything positive to any of these discussions, but rather just stirring up petty Twitter drama, internet drama, I guess in some twisted way to make himself feel better, feel morally superior. But Ethan Klein is superior to nearly no one. All it takes are 2 eyeballs and a semi-functional brain to figure that one out. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We're still shadow banned with the YouTube algorithm. I'm gonna get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Before we start the video, I just want to let you guys know that we launched a Let's Go branded t-shirt on the merch shop, so go ahead and click the link down below in the description. It's a great way to support us here at the Liberal Hive Mind.
Let's go, Brandon. I agree.
Someone's bound to come this way.
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Folks, this is exactly what you like to see. This can only be described as based with a capital B and also a capital A, S, E, and D. This is what it must feel like to elect a true conservative into office, a true leader. The fear, the insecurity of being a conservative leader is having all of these hopes, having a standard for the leaders that you elect, hoping for the world, and of course, being disappointed as you get a rhino, a Republican in name only, a turncoat, a coward, whatever you want to call it. And it's why there is so much hesitancy for Republican candidates that haven't proven themselves. And there was a whole lot of talk in the state of Virginia about Glenn Youngkin. I'm not gonna lie, just visually, just the vibes that you get when you look at him, it felt like there might have been a little bit of rhino in him. But oh man, can looks be deceiving, as Glenn Youngkin, on his first day in office, well, he might have just proved all the critics wrong. Now, of course, it's just his first day, so you can't give him all the credit in the world, but it seems as though, if we're being optimistic here, the state of Virginia might have a Ron DeSantis 2.0. The state of Virginia might have themselves a Glenn Youngkin, and the future of the Republican Party might be on the up and up. It might be looking bright. Hopefully, Virginia is another success story. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here. Before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned with the YouTube algorithm. Hit it. Do not subscribe viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so take a look at this. Glenn Youngkin bans critical race theory, ends mask mandates in schools on first day as Virginia governor. On his first day in office, Virginia's newly elected Republican governor Glenn Youngkin signed 11 executive orders, including ones that he campaigned on, such as ending critical race theory and mask mandates in the state schools. The list of executive orders Youngkin signed are as follows. Executive Order number 1 delivers on his day 1 promise to restore excellence in education by ending ending the use of divisive concepts including critical race theory in public education. Number 2, delivers on his day one promise to empower Virginia parents in their children's education and upbringing by allowing parents to make decisions on whether their child will wear a mask in school. Number 3, delivering on a day one promise to restore integrity and confidence in the parole board of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Number 4, delivers on day one promise to investigate wrongdoing in Loudoun County, which I'm sure a whole lot of people are very, very happy about. The absolutely cowardly Democrats would rather side with teachers unions and protect the schools and protect the teachers instead of protect the kids, an absolutely despicable concept. Executive Order number 6, very important once again, delivering on another day one promise to declare Virginia open for business. Number 7, another day one promise to combat and prevent human trafficking and provide support for survivors. Number 8, establish a commission to combat anti-Semitism. Number 9, withdraw from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. And now we have 2 executive directives. Another day one promise to jumpstart our economy by cutting job-killing regulations by 25%. And directive number 2, to restore individual freedoms and personal privacy by rescinding the jab mandate for all state employees. Folks, the man deserves an absolute standing ovation. It's once again this new trend that we're seeing with Republican candidates, especially political outsiders or people who haven't been long-time Mitch McConnell-type GOPers, part of the swamp. The most important thing throughout every single one of those executive orders is the fact that those were day one promises. Promises made, promises kept. A stark contrast from what you see with Democrats. A great example is the new mayor of New York City, promising to be tough on crime, and then supporting this new woke DA who wants to decriminalize armed robbery, or flip-flopping back and forth on non-citizens getting the right to vote in the city. Nearly 1 million of them, and then of course, the moment he gets elected, signing on to the bill and making it law. In this new Republican movement, what you see is what you get, and every single one of these promises are basically the top priority for Republican voters. This is exactly what people were voting for, and it's what they got. They voted to ban CRT. They got it. They voted for their kids to go back to normal life, given the scientific fact that they are not at risk, and they got it. They voted to investigate what happened in Loudoun County. They got it. It goes on and on, with Glenn Youngkin now opening the state of Virginia for business and getting rid of all the mandates. And most likely what we're going to see here is Virginia being a microcosm of what happened in Florida. Of course, 2 entirely different places, with Florida being a much bigger state, but Virginia will be able to succeed just on a smaller scale, because they now have a governor who's fighting for their interests, fighting for business, fighting for kids, fighting for basic freedoms, and ending the indoctrination of children, finally holding schools and school teachers accountable for their destructive practices. And during Glenn Youngkin's inaugural speech, he championed liberty, opportunity, and a new and better day for Virginia. And based on what we're seeing on day one, I don't think that's going to be an empty promise, just like the other ones weren't. In fact, this new administration in the state of Virginia is getting to business and getting to business fast. Virginia's new Attorney General fires 30 staff members and announces major investigations within hours of taking office. Virginia's new Attorney General, Jason Miyares, fired 30 staff members and announced investigations into the Virginia Parole Board and Loudoun County schools within hours of being sworn into office. Mr. Miyares was sworn in as Virginia's Attorney General on Saturday, and he's already cleaning house. One of the reasons Virginians get so fed up with government is the lack of transparency, and that's a big issue here. The Virginia Parole Board broke the law when they let out murderers, rapists, rapists, and cop killers early on their sentences without notifying the victims. Loudoun County Public Schools covered up an assault on school grounds for political gain, leading to an additional assault of a young girl. And Glenn Youngkin's government is getting to it immediately. The previous Democratic governor and the Democrat goons that surrounded him did nothing. They sat on all of this. They knew it was wrong, but they shoved it under the rug because they were more interested in playing the public relations politics game, the dirty Washington swamp game, instead of doing right by the people of Virginia. This is exactly what draining the swamp is about. This is exactly what this new conservative movement is about. Remaining politically active and holding leaders accountable, electing people into office who will deliver. This is what Trumpism is about. You know, lefties, and especially these dorks on MSNBC, are constantly saying that, well, Trump voters and the whole Trump base, it's just a cult of personality. But what they completely fail to understand is exactly this. It's not about Donald Trump. It's not about Ron DeSantis. It's not about any of these figures. It's about the voters. It's about this new movement, a populist movement, real conservative values, and most importantly, delivering results. And day one in office, Glenn Youngkin has delivered more results than Ralph Northam has in his entire career, has delivered more for the people of Virginia than Joe Biden has in an entire year of being president. This is exactly what Make America Great Again is. This is exactly what America First means. And the way things are going right now, Rhino Republicans being primaried left, right, and center, and leaders like Ron DeSantis and Glenn Youngkin following in his footsteps, well, Republican voters have set a very clear standard. That standard must be met, and it's an absolutely incredible thing, considering there's now standards within the realm of politics. It's time to clean house, folks, and I think this is just the beginning. Hats off to Glenn Youngkin, and for the people of Virginia, I hope the state of Virginia becomes Florida version 2.0. That's what I got for you guys, though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm gonna get back to work, though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. So if you guys watched one of my videos from 2 days ago, I actually posted the exact same meme of the day. White girls on Twitter be like, I am the Lorax. I speak for the people of color, and how true is that? White liberalism, white guilt, white savior complex, whatever you want to call it. It's not just a meme, it is a serious phenomenon that just goes to show how truly manipulative white elitist latte liberals are. The way they stand on the shoulders of minority groups, the way they stand on the shoulders of people who are suffering in order to further their own political ambitions, while doing absolutely nothing for said issues, just using them to virtue signal to feel like better people, or to attain a political position or Twitter clout. And it's a phenomenon, it's something that must be called out. And we have the perfect example as Hillary Clinton stands on the shoulders of Martin Luther King to attack her own party, to attack Kirsten Sinema. And let's just say, well, Twitter isn't buying it. Hillary Clinton made an absolute fool of herself. Let me show you guys what's going on. Let's get into some of the hypocrisy, some of the stuff surrounding Hillary Clinton as well. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, take a look at this from the Gateway Pundit. Hillary Clinton slams, quote, white moderates with Martin Luther King, quote, after Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin blow up Biden's bid to kill the filibuster, and it backfires. Twice failed presidential hopeful Hillary Clinton slammed white moderates with a quote from Martin Luther King after Democrat Senators Sinema and Manchin blew up Joe Biden's bid to kill the filibuster. And so after Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema blocked the Democrats' undemocratic attempt to nuke the filibuster, well, Nancy Pelosi's H.R. 1 bill is now dead on arrival. And Hillary Clinton tweeted out, Martin Luther King Jr. said, I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. This is a subtweet. And of course, there is nothing more genuine to Hillary Clinton and her political image than invoking the spirit of Martin Luther King. You know, that's definitely Hillary Clinton's space in the political world. But of course, in reality, it's just as genuine as Hillary Clinton, claiming that she carries around hot sauce in her purse on Charlemagne's God show.
Something that you always carry with you.
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Are
you getting information right now? Hot sauce. Hot sauce in my bag, Sway?
Hot sauce.
Really?
Yeah.
And like usual, Hillary Clinton's Lorax moment of I, white liberal Twitter wagger, speak for the people of color, well, it didn't exactly go so well. As the Gateway Pundit puts together, black people and leftists hammered Hillary Clinton. What a major backfire. Whenever a non-black person starts a sentence with MLK said, I know it's about to be some BS misconstruction. Edward Ongweso Jr. writes, shut up, shut up, shut up. Another individual writes, girl, if you don't keep King's name out of your mouth. Also, this is a self-burn. Absolutely accurate. Hillary Clinton talking about white moderates as being the dam that blocks the flow of social progress. Hillary Clinton literally is that white moderate. The only time these white moderate Democrats who do absolutely nothing for minority communities are these woke social progressive types are when they're campaigning, and Hillary Clinton clearly is trying to boost her public image and most likely trying to run for 2024. Ashley Reese writes, sis, this is about you. Eric Michael Garcia writes, woman who voted for the Iraq war and who called black kids super predators says what? Hillary Clinton got absolutely blasted on Twitter. It's not even funny. Well, I guess it is pretty funny, but anyways, it once again never ceases to amaze just how out of touch and how disingenuous innocuous these political figures are, and a total lack of self-awareness. How can you not see that this is gonna backfire? I think people are starting to wisen up to what's really going on here. I think after Hillary Clinton's hot sauce moment, and of course, Joe Biden's
You ain't black
moment, people are really starting to wake up as to what these Democrats do. All of a sudden, we're hearing whispers. Political strategist says that Hillary Clinton is the only viable candidate for Democrats in 2024. Hillary's clearly got her eyes on running for the presidency. No one will convince me otherwise. She doesn't just come out of the woodworks out of nowhere and start her pandering political nonsense unless she has political ambitions, and it's truly showing people exactly what's going on here. The way these elitist, globalist, white latte liberals, like I stated in the intro, stand on the backs, stand on the shoulders of minority groups for their own public image is just disgusting. I mean, the true ambition here isn't to make life better for black people. If black people are motivated to vote in an election and to have their voice heard, well, it's very simple. They're gonna go to the voting booth, they're gonna show their ID, and they're gonna vote. This whole voting rights nonsense isn't about giving them a voice, it's about securing Democrat power. It's once again the exact same thing. Pretending to speak for the black community, standing on their shoulders for their own political ambition. And what Hillary Clinton is doing is a microcosm of exactly that, trying to boost her own political stock by standing on the shoulders of Martin Luther King, by trying to market herself as some woke civil rights leader, as if people are just supposed to forget that Hillary Clinton should be nicknamed Hillary Super Predators Clinton. And of course, with her husband and Joe Biden being responsible for the 1994 crime bill that is so deeply disproportionately incarcerated black fathers. It's just about power by any means necessary. Nuke the filibuster, federalize voting rights, and continue to use and abuse racial divisiveness and race issues to further Democrat power and the Democrat agenda. I mean, absolute hypocrites. Hillary Clinton going after Senator Joe Manchin and Senator Kyrsten Sinema as being obstacles fighting against social justice and the rights of black people to vote. Give me a break. You know how I know these Democrats are full of it? The argument has been that the filibuster is a relic of the Jim Crow era. The filibuster is an anti-democratic tool that's used to suppress black people. Again, just showing how Democrats make everything about race. And whenever they don't like something, whenever they want to change something, whenever something gets in their way of power, it somehow has something to do with white supremacy or racism. But of course, Democrats are complete hypocrites on this issue. Democrats filibuster Nord Stream 2 sanctions bill invoking tool that we thought was, quote, overwhelmingly used by racists. Senate Democrats on Thursday defeating an attempt by Republicans to impose sanctions on businesses tied to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which will carry natural gas from Russia to the German coast. They invoked a tool which was, quote, overwhelmingly used by racists to do so according to academics. Vox.com writes, the filibuster's racist history explained. It's been a tool used overwhelmingly by racists, says Kevin Cruz, a historian of race and American politics at Princeton University. The Senate voted 55 to 44 on legislation introduced by Senator Ted Cruz that would have ended the pipeline project, which is supported by Russian President Vladimir Putin and opposed by American allies in Ukraine. So much hypocrisy, so many Democrat narratives are just blowing up. First of all, the Republicans, which are supposed to be Putin's puppets, the party that worked with Russians to undermine the 2016 election, well, they're now trying to impose sanctions on Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and the Democrats filibuster it. Not to mention, Republicans are racist and undemocratic, and it's a continuation of January 6 by filibustering bills that Democrats can't even pass on a simple majority. Meanwhile, this bill that Democrats are filibustering, Republicans got 5 Democrats to co-sign, but somehow, Democrats are justified here. I mean, the hypocrisy, the constant double standard is just disgusting, and it always leads to one place and one place alone. Democrats will do and say they will step over anyone, they will break any law, they will subvert democracy, subvert the Constitution, they will do whatever they have to do, they will put their political enemies in jail as long as it secures them the power that they seek. I've never seen such a group so hellbent, so power-thirsty in my life. It all comes down to one thing. Democrats need to federalize elections before 2022 because my black people and my voter suppression. The filibuster must be ended because my racism. The reality, the true story, what's really going on here is not that Republicans are racist and Democrats are fighting for black people. It's that Democrats will use identity politics and will use race-based grievances as political tools, political weapons for their own benefit. It's their modus operandi. It's It's what they do, and you see it across every single major issue that they fight for. They don't want to make your life better. They don't want to make life better for black and brown folk. They want to keep things the way that they are because they use that exact circumstance and those grievances to get elected and maintain power. Wake up, folks. You're being conned. That's what I got for you guys, though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. I gotta get back to work, though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know how you've created something truly incredible? You know the Democrats, how they continuously describe their own states as liberal utopias? Places like Texas and Florida, I mean essentially no-go zones, don't go there. Ron DeSantis is basically the 1940s Germany little mustache man leader. You know Democrat states, Democrat cities are just so much more successful. You know how we can tell that that's definitely a very accurate, true statement? Because when you create a liberal utopia, an incredible environment, well, the most obvious way to know that you've succeeded is with the numbers. California is such an incredible success story because why else would hundreds of thousands of people be packing up their bags and leaving? I mean, come on guys, wake up. Don't you know when you create a great environment, people leaving said environment at record pace? Well, that just goes to show just how good the environment you created truly is. Enough with the nonsense sarcasm. California is crumbling so bad. It's become such a show, excuse my French. So many people are leaving California that California is running out of U-Hauls. So many people are booking one-way U-Haul trips to Texas that California is experiencing a U-Haul shortage. I mean, oh my God, folks. If that's not a sign of success, then I don't know what is. Let me show you guys what's going on here. Let's go over the disaster that continues to unfold that is, or that are, Democrat cities. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. That out of the way, let's go to the tape. Alright folks, take a look at this right over here. A Californian is fleeing from Texas, Florida so quickly that U-Haul runs out of moving trucks for them. U-Haul recently released a report which showed that there is a severe shortage of vehicles available for customers moving out of California and fleeing for the free states of Texas and Florida due to sharply increased demand. The report, which found that migration to southern states continued throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, indicated that the majority of these moves using the company's services was to Texas, the top destination. California and Illinois ranked as the states with the greatest one-way net losses of U-Haul trucks, according to the report. Other states that are prime destinations for internal migration include Florida and Tennessee, which were the #1 destinations in 2019 and 2020, respectively. The Lone Star State was back up at that top spot for the 2021 year. The results of the U-Haul report are not a surprise for Matt Merrill, the U-Haul area district vice president for Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex and West Texas. We see a lot of growth coming from the east and the west coast, he said. A lot of people are moving here from California and New York. We also see a lot of people coming in from the Chicago markets, Merrill argued. I think that's a lot due to job growth, a lot of opportunity here. The cost of living here is much lower than those areas. Texas is open for business. And so just like the southern border crisis wasn't seasonal, just like inflation isn't transitory, it seems as though American citizens fleeing these Democrat cesspools isn't transitory either. It's not just a flash phenomenon. It seems to be something that's ramping up. More and more people are getting so fed up with living in these Democrat states and cities. More and more they're looking over the fence to the other side and seeing that the grass is much greener. But let's really start to put that into perspective. Breitbart News reports, video, 2 carjacked in New York City less than 1 hour apart. Quote, it's scary. 2 drivers became victims of carjackings in separate Manhattan incidents in under 1 hour on Wednesday, authorities told the New York Post. The man who was inside his Toyota Camry said he was on the phone with his wife when he saw police approach the Audi and ordered the suspect to put his hands up, but the suspect instead hit the gas, the victim said. He started hitting my car, going the wrong way into me, the victim recalled. It's scary, my car got hit. About 45 minutes later, another male suspect armed with a box cutter stole a black Infiniti with TLC plates on West 36th Street near 7th Avenue, cops said. And the craziest part about this is now with Eric Adams and his new radical district attorney in New York City. Well, some of these crimes will be classified as misdemeanors, won't even really be enforced, and so what you're seeing now is just the start. And actually we get an update that it was actually 3 drivers carjacked in Midtown Manhattan as city experiences a rise in car theft. It's gotten so bad in Democrat cities, and now even the Philadelphia police are releasing a guide to surviving carjackings as crime skyrockets. On Wednesday, Commissioner Danielle Outlaw reported that there have been 757 reported carjackings in Philadelphia in 2021, a 31% increase over the year before. Police only arrested 150 individuals and cleared 93 investigations, she said on Facebook. Things have gotten so bad that the Philadelphia police commissioner released this on her Twitter account. There is no single issue that is more important to me or the members of the PPD than fighting violent crime. One of the more disturbing trends that we have seen is the startling increase in the number of carjackings. Here is what we're doing about it. Philadelphia police carjacking. What you should know. Hotspots, scenarios, and safety tips. No crackdown on violent crime. Just here's a pamphlet about how to deal with it and where not to go. Speaking of places not to go, the city of Chicago, as the Chicago teachers unions continue to fight to keep children safe by keeping schools closed, and Mayor Lori Lightfoot seems to be focused on her own public image and the COOF-19. Two 14-year-old boys shot and lose their lives during separate attacks in Lori Lightfoot's Chicago. More senseless violence, kids, teenagers losing their lives. Of course, all under Democrat leadership. Here's another interesting statistic. Intentional homicide of police officers spiked 59% in 2021, the most since 1995 based on FBI data. In Democrat cities, it's basically open season on police officers. Democrats have an absolutely abysmal track record when it comes to public safety, and their anti-police rhetoric, the demonization and the scapegoating of police officers and police departments, is having devastating, deadly effect. Laws are not being enforced anymore. Police officers have their hands metaphorically tied behind their backs, and then on top of that, police officers are being demonized, and it's basically a free-for-all for criminals. I mean, speaking of a free-for-all and laws not being enforced, and cities not doing anything, if your Amazon or UPS package is long overdue for delivery, it may be among the thousands looted from broken into train cars in Los Angeles and discarded by the tracks. Take a look at this picture right over here. I mean, not only is housing so unaffordable in California, especially in Los Angeles, that you can see all the Winnebagos parked on the side of the street where people are literally living there. Not only is it absolutely filthy, but as you can see all these train cars over here, California, Los Angeles being one of the major ports and major hubs for the American supply chain, but there is virtually no security, nothing being done. But these train cars are being looted at an astonishing degree. I mean, we've covered this before, but this picture really puts it into perspective. Look at all of the boxes and discarded junk around. All of those boxes are from looted train cars, where people are just ransacking them, taking the goods, and discarding the boxes. Los Angeles is turning into Los Santos. Democrat cities, especially with all the carjackings, are turning into real-life Grand Theft Auto. Democrats continue to make it worse. With their soft-on crime, just ignore it or enable it and eventually it's gonna go away approach. Frankly, the only thing that's gonna solve this is a Rudy Giuliani type crackdown on crime. And the more this stuff gets out of hand, I think honestly, that's probably exactly what's eventually going to happen. Democrat cities are out of control, and no wonder hundreds of thousands of people are fleeing to Texas and Florida. I mean, for Pete's sakes. Even defund the police pro-coup restrictions Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez fled to Florida to experience freedom again. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm gonna get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, it seems as though, finally, people are asking the right questions. Now, this has been my criticism since day one. Nancy Pelosi claims that her 1/6 commission is bipartisan, but there is no one on the commission asking real questions, the important questions. Of course, questions like, who is Ray Epps? And how was the FBI involved? And how were federal agencies potentially involved in inciting the riot? It's the very curious case of Ray Epps. Who is he connected to? And what did he whisper in that man's ear on that fateful day? Well, finally, thanks to your political pressure, after Ted Cruz' absolutely massive blunder, after all the criticism, all the pushback after Tucker Carlson put the guy in his place, well, Ted Cruz finally asked the right question. It's too early to forgive him and give him credit. He's frankly just trying to save face. But finally, Republicans are asking the right questions. Finally, Republicans are representing the will of their voters, the questions their voters have. That is exactly exactly what we got to talk about for this video. Who is Ray Epps? Who is he connected to? And of course, why is this important? But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so let's first start off with context for those of you guys who don't know what's going on here. During the other day's Senate Judiciary hearing, Ted Cruz and other Republicans finally asked the right questions.
How many FBI agents or confidential informants actively participated in the events of January 6th?
Sir, I'm sure you can appreciate that I can't go into the specifics of sources and methods.
Did any FBI agents or confidential informants actively participate in the events of January 6th? Yes or no?
Sir, I can't answer that.
Did any FBI agents or confidential informants commit crimes of violence on January 6th?
I can't answer that, sir.
Did any FBI agents or FBI informants actively encourage and incite crimes of violence?
I must move quickly. The cold truth, mine.
Ms. Sadburn, who is Ray Epps?
I'm aware of
Now we're cooking.
I don't have the specific background of him.
Who is Ray Epps, and how many FBI agents or confidential informants actively participated in the events of January 6th? The non-answer from the FBI tells you probably most of what you already knew, or most of what you need to know, and it starts to really paint a picture to the potential involvement of federal agencies, gaslighting or inciting what we saw on January 6th. And now when it comes to who Ray Epps is and what his involvement was, well friends, this is Ray Epps.
In fact, tomorrow, I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested. We need to go, I'll say it. We need to go in to the Capitol. Let's go! So I'm going to put it out there. I'm probably going to go to jail for it, okay? Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. Peacefully. Fed. Peacefully. Okay, folks. Grab the word. As soon as the president's done speaking, we go to the Capitol. The Capitol's this direction. He's done speaking. We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are. It's that direction. He spread the word.
One must consider.
Another soul to consume.
The man caught on video literally inciting a riot, with Trump supporters saying no and then chanting Fed, 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 refusing to get gaslit into this obvious optics trap. But on the actual day itself, Ray Epps was seen whispering in a man's ear right before individuals passed through the barricade. And so the question was asked, who is Ray Epps and what was his involvement? Well, I guess there's nothing more to question, because as we're seeing left-wing mainstream media outlets report, Ray Epps testified that he is not an informant or working for the FBI, January 6th committee says. Oh, that pretty much wraps it up. Fact checkers from Snopes and PolitiFact report that there is no evidence that Epps is connected to any law enforcement agency. He testified to the committee that he had no involvement, and so that pretty much wraps it up, folks. No more questions, pack up your bags, go home, and just forget all about this kooky Tucker Carlson right-wing alt-right conspiracy theory. Give me a break. Nothing that the left is saying here makes any sense. Adam Kinzinger pushing their same narrative, which is about as paradoxical as it gets, in reference to Ray Epps writing, he was on video the day before January 6th saying, "We're going into the Capitol," saying the same thing on the day of, then followed up with, he hadn't entered the Capitol on January 6th and was removed from the most wanted list because apparently he broke no laws. Well, I'm pretty sure, Mr. Adam Kinzinger, you complete doofus, you just contradicted yourself. Inciting a riot according to federal law is defined as acts of organizing, promoting, encouraging, participating in a riot, and urging others to riot. You know, it's kind of ironic because the January 6th committee's sole purpose is to pin basically this exact charge on Donald Trump, that Donald Trump himself incited the riot during his speech the day of, where he literally told people to peacefully protest non-violently outside of the Capitol, and somehow he's guilty of inciting an insurrection. Meanwhile, Ray Epps seems to have broke no laws, and seems to have, interestingly enough, incited the events of January 6th, causing people to enter the Capitol, but then he himself had the foresight to not step into the Capitol, inciting other people to do it, riling up a crowd, and then not participating in it at all. That doesn't seem suspicious? No questions asked, folks. He testified before Nancy Pelosi's commission, and that pretty much wraps it. Like I keep saying, give me a break. What's going on here? It seems as though he was a professional planted agitator, clearly taking advantage of what's called mob mentality. For those of you guys who aren't aware, it's a psychological term, as we see here on psychologytoday.com. The psychology of mob mentality. Is this what happened with the infiltration of the Capitol on January 6th? And so the concept of mob mentality is that otherwise peaceful people or well-meaning people, when in a riotous mob, tend to sort of lose themselves and just sort of get swept up with the whole energy that's going on. It's almost a primal human instinct that kicks in, a psychological element that can completely take over a group of people, and of course bad things can ensue. Ray Epps seemed to have been keenly aware of this idea and was very much pouring fuel on the flames, causing the fire to burst and then backing off right before the fuel ignites. There are just too many questions. Questions related to why Capitol Hill police officers were ushering people into the building, taking barricades down, why, considering the reports of heightened security threats or potentially a riotous mob, was extra Capitol security bolstering defenses and putting up a fence, why that request was shut down, and why some politicians seem to know that something was coming before the actual events themselves, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for instance, who posted this video a couple days prior, or about a week prior.
A week before, 1 week before, the week prior to the insurrection, I started to get text messages that I needed to be careful. And that in particular, I needed to be careful about the 6th. And those text messages came from other members of Congress. They were not threats, but they were other members saying that they knew.
I mean, there's legitimate questions here. We know for a fact it's been confirmed. One Antifa member participated in the events themselves. And so the question remains, what role did government officials, government agencies, and Antifa infiltrators have in gaslighting this mob mentality, and Antifa infiltrators have in inciting the events of January 6th? If Nancy Pelosi's 1/6 commission was truly bipartisan, was truly fair, and trying to get to the truth as they state, then these questions would be seriously asked, or at least the opposing view would be legitimately investigated. Instead, what we receive is, well, Ray Epps said no, so that pretty much wraps it, and what it's probably going to lead to right before 2022, as they continue to drag this whole thing on, is a criminal referral to the FBI that Donald Trump is guilty of all charges for inciting a mob. The political nonsense continues, and hopefully, it leads to a Republican sweep in 2022, where the focus is on accountability and a truly bipartisan investigation into what really happened here. Once again, with a heavy focus on accountability. The question remains, who is Ray Epps? That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm gonna get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
My elements are frightful.
The light shall bring victory.
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. And just like that, another win. Now, of course, some wins are big, like Joe Biden's mandate getting slapped down by the Supreme Court just the other day, and other wins are small, like the headline for this video. But the beauty of these small little victories here and there is that they pile up, and that's exactly what we've been seeing, folks. Election integrity. This is what has the Democrats fearful. This is what has the Democrats in total panic, trying to nuke the filibuster so that they can change voting from a federal level. They're panicked because Republicans are securing democracy, securing elections. And of course, how can Democrats win in a fair environment? Without an unfair advantage, what can Democrats do? But once again, Democrats are losing in the battle of election integrity, as another Wisconsin county rules against ballot Dropboxes. Headed into 2022, and most likely headed into 2024 as well, it looks like Democrats aren't going to get widespread mail-in voting. It looks looks like Democrats aren't going to have the same environment that they had in 2020 with ballot drop boxes everywhere and mass ballot harvesting. Democrats are losing the battle of election integrity on a federal level, on a state level through state legislatures. But of course, that's not stopping them from trying to get an unfair advantage as they focus now on redistricting. And let me show you guys exactly what I mean. The good, the bad, and the ugly. But before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, you know what I have a deep appreciation for? An absolutely basic judge, and that's exactly what we're seeing in this Wisconsin county. Breaking: Wisconsin county judge rules against ballot drop boxes. A Wisconsin county judge ruled Thursday that absentee ballot boxes are not allowed under state law. Circuit Court Judge Michael Boren ruled that under state law there is no authorization for drop boxes and ordered the Wisconsin Election Commission to rescind its guidance on how to use drop boxes according to NPR. In looking at the statutes, there is no specific authorization for drop boxes. Judge Boren ruled in favor of the Wisconsin Institute of Law and Liberty, WILL, and their lawsuit against the state's election commission. Ahead of the 2020 presidential election, the Wisconsin Elections Commission issued guidance for clerks instructing them to collect absentee ballots in drop boxes. The commission said that this was implemented because more residents voted absentee due to the COVID pandemic, according to NPR. Assistant Attorney General Stephen Kilpatrick, the attorney for WEC, argued that the documents are supposed to be used as advice or guidance to local clerks who run elections, not as an order. These memos are guidance documents because they guide local election officials, Kilpatrick said. They do not order them to do anything. WILL attorney Luke Berg argued that there is no written law in the state of Wisconsin that allows the use of drop boxes or anything similar for that matter. A shoebox on a bench in a park would be legal for collecting ballots, Berg said. Now that's absurd, of course, but that's the logical consequence of this position that the commission is taking, and it's another massive victory. I mean, there have been so many states, and most importantly, a lot of these states, being some of the most pivotal swing states, have enacted incredible election security reform. Ballot drop boxes are about to be a thing of the past. Mass unsolicited mail-in ballots just being sent out willy-nilly without even being requested, hopefully a thing of the past. That right there does not bode too well for Democrats. That's just a given. That's why the Dems are in panic mode. That's why Joe Biden is focused so heavily on this war for voting rights. That's why the Democrats are so unhinged in their efforts to federalize elections and voting. I mean, they straight up look crazy. Joe Biden the other day trying to sell that piece of legislation to the American people during his event in Georgia was an absolute disaster. He looked crazy. He looked ridiculous. Comparing Republicans and comparing Americans to George Wallace and Bull Connor, the man looked like a nutcase. Will they take that stuff seriously? It shows nothing but desperation. And speaking of looking like a nutcase, Nancy Pelosi defending Joe Biden, well, she equally looks like a nutcase.
And do you think that the president may have gone a little bit too far in trying to sell this particular bill to the American people and trying to get votes to try and get this passed by breaking the filibuster?
No, I stand with the president. I think that I thought his speech was wonderful, and I stand with him in the fight for voting rights. No criticism of Mr. Durbin. He has to do what he has to do vis-a-vis his own members and the rest. The only criticism I would make, too, I won't say they're criticisms, but observations, nobody knows who Bull Connor is. And if we're making the case to say when it be with Martin Luther King or Bull Connor, who's that? Will it be with Martin Luther King or the people, Martin Luther King and John Lewis, or the people who unleashed the fierce dogs on them? That's who Bull Connor is.
The only criticism that Nancy Pelosi has is that Joe Biden didn't go far enough. People don't know who Bull Connor is. He should have described exactly who Bull Connor is, unleashing the dogs on civil rights protesters like Martin Luther King and John Lewis, and then it would have been an even better speech. I mean, absolutely disgusting. How unhinged does Nancy Pelosi look? There's no way that people are watching this stuff and thinking to themselves that Nancy Pelosi and the rest of these Democrats are of sound mind. They've lost it. They've lost the plot. They're currently the political party in power, and they're focused on all of this nonsense, and they're focused on trying to rig the game instead of delivering results. I think that's probably what most Americans are thinking, at least most Americans, once again, of sound mind, and not these unhinged partisan Democrats who will stop at nothing to win. And of course, speaking of stopping at nothing, the Democrats are truly stopping at nothing. They're losing on a state level when it comes to election integrity. They're losing on a federal level when it comes to changing the rules in their favor. And so what are they doing? Well, once again, you know how Democrats are always calling Republicans undemocratic? How many times have you heard Democrats crying about unfair gerrymandering? And the accusation of racial gerrymandering or gerrymandering in general seems to always point in one direction. It's always those evil Republicans, with Merrick Garland and the DOJ recently suing the state of Texas, claiming their redistricting process was done with racial motive to deny black and brown people the right to vote. Once again, the same bogus narrative. Well, it seems as though Democrats are equally, if not much more, guilty of partisan gerrymandering. Blue state blues. Republicans should not be overconfident about 2022 or 2024. The 2020 census seemed to bode well for Republicans as liberal states lost congressional seats and conservative states gained seats. Initially, one analyst predicted a gain of up to 7 seats for Republicans from redistricting alone, based on the fact that Republicans already controlled so many state legislatures and even managed to increase their control in 2020. But after the redistricting was done, Democrats actually did better than Republicans. That was partially because of Democrat-run states like Illinois abandoning their plans for nonpartisan, independent redistricting commissions and simply used their power to gerrymander Republicans out of seats. It was also because in states like California, the Democrats know how to game the quote independent commissions, and the new district map makes 5 Republican-held districts out of 11 more vulnerable in 2022 than they were until now. Nationwide, Democrats may have gained up to 9 seats from redistricting alone. We've covered this in the recent past as independent California redistricting map boosts Democrats and hurts Republicans, Los Angeles again, and how Illinois Democrats' new congressional map spells doom for some incumbents, including GOP Representative Adam Kinzinger. And so as the political trend is clearly not in favor of Democrats, from 2018 to 2020, now to 2022, they're expected to lose a whole lot of House seats. Well, what do? They once again do what Democrats do and corrupt the system, this time corrupting, quote, independent redistricting commissions to give themselves more seats. We also have Democrats blocking a plan to remove foreign nationals from voter rolls. On Wednesday, Democrats voted down an amendment by Representative Rodney Davis, Republican from Illinois, that would have kicked likely hundreds and potentially thousands of foreign nationals off state voter rolls. Once again, Republicans have been fighting to clean the voter rolls, to get rid of deceased individuals or non-nationals, and Democrats continue to fight it. Whenever there's common sense voter integrity measures, Democrats are always trying to thwart the process. Every single time, right before a major election, the big story that nobody is talking about is what Democrats are doing behind the scenes to try to give themselves an unfair advantage. But thankfully this time, I don't think it's going to be enough. They lost too much power in state legislatures. They're losing the battle for election integrity. They may have gained a couple seats off redistricting, but considering all of the retirements, considering the data, considering how bad Democrats are doing, I think they're going to need a whole lot more than 9 seats, or perceived advantages in 9 districts. They're going to need a whole lot more than that, because I'm thinking upward of 30, 40, 50 seats flipping red, and I just don't think it's going to be enough. But once again, you can see exactly where the Democrats' heads are, and you can see exactly the dirty games that they play. Republicans fighting for election security aren't insurrectionists. You're not George Wallace. You're not Bull Connor. You're a patriot with common sense, trying to do what needs to be done to keep Democrats away from the levers of power. In other words, you're a hero. That's what I got for you guys, though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm gonna get back to work, though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Fine. It wasn't that big.
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Folks, it is time to rejoice. Criminal Joe Biden and his illegal jab mandate imposed on private business has officially been thrown out, blocked by the Supreme Court. Now, this was pretty much destined to happen. I mean, Joe Biden's record against the Supreme Court, thanks to Donald Trump's 3 scoops, has been completely abysmal. The man just keeps losing and losing and losing and losing. If Joe Biden was a sports franchise, he'd be the New York Jets, because his presidency's image right now is nothing but loss. Democrats thought they had a little shred of hope, a little opportunity, a little window, after one federal court ruled that Joe Biden's mandate could go on, even though there were several other courts that had completely blocked it. But it should have been obvious from the start to Democrats, it should have been obvious from the start to Joe Biden, that there was absolutely no way this illegal, unconstitutional act was going to fly. There's no way the Supreme Court was going to allow this to continue. And finally, justice has been served and criminal Joe Biden has been blocked. It's been a really grim year for Joe Biden and his administration, but more specifically, it's been a really bad week, suffering loss after loss after loss. So bad, in fact, that CNN, Joe Biden's best friend, has dubbed this week Joe Biden's Week from Hell. I kid you not, let me show you guys everything that's going on here. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so here's the initial update. The Supreme Court has officially rejected Biden's OSHA jab mandate on private employers, but upholds CMS mandate. The decision on the OSHA mandate was 6-3, and the decision on the CMS mandate 5-4, with Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh joining the court's 3 Democrat appointees in upholding it. So they've upholded mandates for federal employees. That's one thing pretty much that was expected to happen, but very strongly opposing the OSHA mandate, creating a federal Gestapo-like force enforcing testing and jabs on private businesses with over 100 employees. Now, I've made so many videos on mandates, I've ranted a million different times, we've covered this from start to finish. It's time to put this one to rest. Joe Biden has been stopped, and there's pretty much not much else to talk about. It's another massive loss for Joe. It's another huge win for the Constitution and basic freedom of choice and bodily autonomy. What we really need to get into, however, so I'm going to try not to sound like a broken record on mandates. We know they're wrong, we know they're bad, we know Joe Biden's a criminal. What I really want to focus on here is the absolutely awful week that Joe Biden has had. I mean, we've been calling Joe Biden a lame duck president, but really, Joe Biden's not just a lame duck, he is the lamest of ducks. And there's a distinct difference. In fact, it's so extreme, it's so bad, that even CNN is covering, quote, Biden's brutal week, dubbing it the Week from Hell. Take a look at this.
President Joe Biden has had a very tough week with setbacks for his agenda, COVID complications, and the Supreme Court blocking his vaccine mandate, inflation, and international turmoil, just to name a few. CNN's Lauren Fox is joining us live now from Capitol Hill. Lauren, Biden's voting rights bill has been torpedoed by members of his own parties.
And you know liberals are probably screeching from the mountaintops, or frankly screeching from the Twitter sphere, that CNN is corrupt. They're treating Joe Biden much worse than they treated Donald Trump. Week from hell, how dare they? The only reason Joe Biden is so unpopular is because the media continues to go after him. No, what the media is doing is covering objective reality, that Joe Biden is a monumental failure and it's been a week of failure. Supreme Court blocks his jab mandate, testing shortages. As we've covered before, even though the Biden administration kept warning about a grim winter, a winter of illness and sorrow and despair. Coof is gonna ravage the nation through the winter, they kept saying that. Joe Biden failed to order any of the new Coof treatment pills, and failed to order the millions of tests in advance that they needed. CDC confusion, of course, which even CNN has been covering recently, inflation accelerating, Build Back Better stalls in the Senate, fears of Russia invading Ukraine, North Korea launching missiles again, and his approval at 42%, his aggregate approval, with the most recent Quinnipiac poll having him at 33%, which might even indicate that the closer we get to 2022, Joe Biden's aggregate approval rating might even hit the 30s. CNN finally is, at least to a certain extent, maybe a little lightly, and you can tell the bias that they're not exactly happy about it, reporting on the dismal reality that is the Biden administration, with even John King saying this.
The country is frustrated, his party is frustrated. We're 2 weeks into a midterm election year, a few days away from his one-year anniversary of inauguration, and it is black. It is very dark for him right now.
It's a very dark time for him right now. The reality is, CNN isn't treating Biden unfairly. In fact, like I just stated, they're going light on him. Fox News basically did the exact same segment as CNN, and you can compare and contrast the two. CNN was being nice.
Yeah, I just can't get over all that's happened this past week when it comes to how bad the week has gone for President Biden. We have a few of them. I mean, this may not even cover it all, but the CDC fact-checks liberal justices pushing vaccine mandates. Americans are losing faith in the CDC. They're still finding it hard to get a COVID test. Record cases across the country. Hospitals reaching capacity. The POTUS pivots to voting rights. That didn't pan out for him. The list goes on and on and on. Vice President Harris is being mocked for that TV interview. Manchin says There's been no renegotiating for Build Back Better. Russia is a disaster. Those talks are falling apart. North Korea fired yet another missile. And then, of course, we got the approval ratings from President Biden yesterday. The Quinnipiac approval rating sinking to 33%.
Complete disaster. And of course, it's not just the OSHA mandate. Joe Biden's been making his push on voting rights and suspending the filibuster, both of which this week failed. Here's Joe Biden after the legislative failure. Let's just say Joe Biden wasn't very happy. Some might even say Joe Biden snapped.
The state legislative bodies continue to change the law, not as to who can vote, but who gets to count the vote. Count the vote. Count the vote. It's about election subversion, not just whether or not people get to vote. Who counts the vote?
Does that seem to you like a president that's winning and delivering on promises? Absolutely not. After Kyrsten Sinema stood by her morals and refused to change the filibuster, MSNBC's Mitchell says Kyrsten Sinema completely embarrassed Biden.
Kyrsten Sinema did something that is extraordinary. Yes, anyone who was reading her body language had to know where she came down on this. She had made no secret of it, but she wasn't very openly, publicly verbal about it. But she went to the floor of the Senate within an hour of the president coming up there to address her office, knowing exactly what he was going to do. And she completely embarrassed, politically embarrassed, the leader of her own party, the sitting president of the United States, and was giving absolutely no leeway. She made it absolutely clear that she will not give on this.
Build Back Better, dead in the water, as even Joe Manchin said recently that no progress has been made in discussions. Changing the filibuster to enable Democrats to federally take over elections, the final push has been stopped by Kyrsten Sinema, and now even CNN is debunking Joe Biden's rhetoric related to H.R. 1 or the Voting Rights Act after he traveled to the state of Georgia, likened Republicans to George Wallace and other awful segregationist figures, once again claiming that Republican election reform in the state of Georgia was Jim Crow 2.0. Such ridiculous rhetoric that even CNN is now debunking him, isn't even buying it.
And take vote by mail as one example. Here's what Biden said this week, criticizing Georgia's new law.
A place to hide.
Voting is a safe and convenient way to get more people to vote. So they're making it harder for you to vote by mail.
Okay, well, New York is one of the most reliably Democratic states in the United States, and New York requires people to request absentee ballots, just like the new Georgia law does. Now, Georgia allows anyone to request an absentee ballot. New York does not. In New York, it's actually more restrictive. There are specific guidelines as to who can request an absentee ballot. In fact, back in November, New Yorkers voted down a constitutional amendment that would allow anyone to request an absentee ballot for any reason at all by 55 to 45% in an overwhelmingly Democratic state. And let's take a look at early voting. Georgia, the new law, the law that's sort of Abraham Lincoln versus Jefferson Davis, allows for 17 days of early voting. New York only has 9.
Disaster, disaster, disaster piled on with more disaster, with Bidenflation, consumer price index jumping to a full year record of 9.7%, getting very close to the Jimmy Carter era. Some may rightfully argue as well that it's actually worse than the Jimmy Carter era, considering inflation is calculated differently now, but a complete week of failure, disaster. And that's why I'm pretty comfortable in my prediction going forward. I think headed into 2022, headed into the midterms, Joe Biden's approval rating will break below 40%. I think he's going to be in the 30s. And if that happens, well, it might spell the end for the Democrat Party, at least for a little while. It's time for the Democrats to change course, to have a serious wake-up call. But actually, as I covered in my other video, I doubt that's coming anytime soon. When Kamala Harris was questioned about whether they should change course, well, this was the response.
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree.
Yep, the Democrats are screwed. That's what I got for you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know, the entire theory of an election is to have hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people scrutinize, analyze, judge, vet, whatever you want to call it, particular candidates, in order to find the most competent leader. Charismatic, competent individuals who will be able to lead a community, a state, a country to a more peaceful and prosperous time. At least that's what it's supposed to be on paper. What it seems to be in the real world, well, doesn't exactly deliver, now does it? And this current administration is probably the greatest example of that. It's absolutely fascinating. I mean, lefties are always advocating that government should be doing more. We need bigger government, more government control, more government programs. And then they elect possibly the most incompetent people on the planet. It's the difference between government and the free market. The free market works purely on meritocracy, who can produce, where government seems to attract useless, incompetent leeches who are good at a couple things, acting and manipulating. Who's the best example of exactly that? Well, it's none other than Kamala Harris. This is the concept that I want to cover. The number 2 most powerful person in the country, although some may argue that the vice presidency is a purely symbolic role that doesn't really do anything. But Kamala Harris, theoretically the second most powerful person in the United States, heir to the throne, so to speak, the future of the Democrat brand, is such an incompetent twat who can't even string a coherent sentence together or answer a simple question. The topic of conversation has often been around Joe Biden's level of incompetence, but at least Joe Biden during his youthful years was all there and was a relatively sharp politician. Kamala Harris, well, seems to be a completely different story, and let me show you guys exactly what I mean. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so let's go back to this idea that when you have millions of people voting for specific individuals, that the best man or the best woman for the job should be hired. The whole country is vetting these candidates, millions of people are backing them, and the least you might expect is that this individual that is elected to a position of power, a position of leadership, should be able to tackle complex issues and answer tough questions. Kamala Harris definitely seems to deliver. Take a look at this.
6 former administration officials last week worked at a matter urging the administration to change course, to change strategy. Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree.
So you see exactly what I was leading up to. The moment Kamala Harris is met with any type of scrutiny, the moment she has to answer a real question, the whole thing just falls apart. And honestly, it's probably the best way to describe this current administration. If anything ever goes off script, well, they either dodge, they either kick the press out of the room, or something like this happens, which probably leads to total chaos in the White House. You know, we had those reports in the past of Kamala Harris fostering a toxic work environment where she's constantly yelling and berating her staff. At one point, there was the quote that had leaked to the media that Kamala Harris was livid, that she wasn't being prepared properly by her team or by the White House for the tasks that she was given or for the questions that she was receiving. Well, most likely after Kamala Harris was asked once again a very simple question and it led to this, what do you think happened behind closed doors? Most likely Kamala Harris berating her staff. Nobody told me they'd ask me a real question. It's completely ridiculous. The Vice President of the United States cannot answer the simplest of questions. You know, once again, going back to what you should expect, I mean, basic standards of leadership, changing course. If you're the captain of a ship and said vessel is headed directly into a deadly storm, well, what do? You divert course, you go around the storm, try to find calmer waters, because that's your job as captain of the ship. Well, once again, the current White House proves that it has no flexibility and a complete inability to divert course. It's been an entire year of failure, scandal, and crisis. And when asked the question, do you think that you guys should be making a change, changing your strategy? It's such an alien concept to Kamala Harris that her brain seems to malfunction. She's not quick-witted enough to come up with a political non-answer, and it results in what can probably only be described as abject public relations failure. And of course, when it comes to Kamala Harris, you know it's not her first public relations failure, and you certainly know it's not the first time she showed that she has a complete inability to answer basic questions. Here's Kamala Harris just the other week being questioned on whether or not it was wrong to consider inflation transitory.
People there going into their 3rd year of this pandemic. You're talking about cost of living. Was it wrong to consider inflation transitory? I mean, these price spikes seem like they're going to be with us for a while.
We have to address the fact that we got to deal with the fact that folks are paying for gas, paying for groceries, and need solutions to it. So let's talk about that. Short-term solution includes what we need to do around the supply chain, right? So we went to the ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach, Savannah, Georgia, and said, hey guys, no more 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, 24/7. Let's move the products because people need their they need what they need. We're dealing with it in terms of the long term, and that's about what we need to do to pass Build Back Better. It strengthens our economy.
I mean, absolutely incoherent. The only part that made even a little bit of sense was having dock workers work longer hours and keeping the docks open 24/7. The rest of it just completely nonsensical and incoherent. Somehow Build Back Better, with all of its social spending programs, is good for the economy. And I guess somehow she's implying that it's good for inflation. I mean, completely ludicrous. She asked a very simple question. Was it wrong to consider inflation transitory? Even Jerome Powell admitted that yes, we were wrong, and it's going to be much longer lasting as inflation continues to get worse on an upward trajectory throughout the entire year of 2021. Literally all she had to say was, yeah, we were incorrect to assume that it was transitory, but she would never admit that, of course, because then she'd have to admit that the southern border crisis wasn't seasonal and wasn't due to climate change, but once again due to inept Biden administration policies. I mean, the true level of incompetence is staggering. In fact, it's so staggering, it's so obvious, it's so incredible, that now even the left-wing media is asking Kamala Harris questions like this.
Are we going to see the same Democratic ticket in 2024?
I'm sorry, we are thinking about today. I mean, honestly, that I know why you're asking the question, because this is the part of the punditry and the gossip around places like Washington, D.C. Let me just tell you something. We're focused on the things in front of us. We're focused on what we need to do to address issues like affordable child care, what we need to do to ensure.
So there have been no conversations about 2024?
The American people sent us here to do a job. And right now there's a lot of work to be done, and that's my focus.
It sounds
sincerely.
Like you're at least familiar with some of the punditry. I don't know if you've heard that there's been some talk about a Biden-Cheney ticket perhaps in 2024. Did you read that article?
I did not. No, I did not, and I really could care less about the high-class gossip on these issues.
Should we expect the same Democrat ticket in 2024? You can tell Kamala Harris is absolutely furious that he asked her that question, calling it punditry and Washington rumors. But the reality is, this administration is failing so badly that even the left-wing media is questioning how long they will last. And frankly, as the Democrat building burns down, you can clearly tell that they are frantically looking around, trying to find the emergency exit, to exit their position, to get us far away from the Biden-Harris administration or the potential of a Biden-Harris 2.0 ticket in 2024. And considering the sheer level of incompetence, Kamala Harris just straight up not being qualified for her position, and Joe Biden's melting brain, well, I don't exactly blame him. Who you probably should blame are the 81 million people who voted for such utter incompetence. If that's not an argument for smaller government, then I don't know what is. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm gonna get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. And so, just like that, Joe Biden is once again exposed as a massive fraud. Remember, just yesterday we covered Joe Biden's speech where he compared Republicans fighting against the Democrats' federal takeover of elections as essentially being the same thing as George Wallace, an avowed racist and segregationist from Alabama in the 1940s. And in that video, we pointed out that George Wallace was in fact a Democrat. We also pointed out Joe Biden's affinity for figures like Robert Byrd and his connection to these old racist politician types. And lo and behold, the next day the truth comes out that Republicans can't be compared to George Wallace or associated with George Wallace. But you know who is directly and literally connected to George Wallace? Dun dun dun, surprise to absolutely no one, Joe Biden, who had a personal relationship with George Wallace that can probably only be described as very friendly, almost as if Joe Biden looked up to George Wallace as a political role model. And so it all starts to come full circle and make sense. Maybe that's why George Wallace's name immediately popped up for Joe Biden. Maybe that's why his brain went straight there, because he was projecting. What an absolute pathetic dotard. Just as Ben Shapiro said, let me update you guys on exactly what's going on here, as Newsmax Greg Kelly puts it all under the spotlight, really puts it into perspective. And Joe Biden is once again looking like an absolute hypocritical fool once it's all said and done. But before we get into any of it, make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. Of course, we're still shadow banned, but the YouTube algorithm hidden for non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so first off, who exactly is George Wallace? As Wikipedia writes, George Corley Wallace Jr. was an American politician who served as the 45th governor of Alabama for 4 terms. A member of the Democratic Party, he is best remembered for his staunch segregationist and populist views. During his tenure, he promoted industrial development, low taxes, and trade schools. Wallace sought the United States presidency as a Democrat 3 times and once as an independent, but was unsuccessful each time. Wallace opposed desegregation and supported the policies of, quote, Jim Crow during the Civil Rights Movement, declaring in his 1963 inaugural address that he stood for, quote, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And of course, Joe Biden's whole campaign is all about Jim Crow 2.0, connecting Republicans to Jim Crow. But of course, as I stated in the intro, the only person with any connection to Jim Crow and George Wallace is Joe Biden. Not making headlines, Joe Biden repeatedly praises racist Democrat George Wallace and bragged about an award Wallace gave him. Greg Kelly from Newsmax is going to break it all down.
Okay, being on the side of George Wallace would be a very bad thing. Funny thing is, Joe Biden and George Wallace were friends. In fact, he bragged about it. Now again, to review, George Wallace was the segregationist governor of Alabama. He ran for president in 1972. He was the victim of an assassination attempt that kept him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. But Joe Biden, when he was campaigning for office throughout his career, he would brag about how much George Wallace liked him. Let's go to it. Number 1, back when he was interviewed by the Delaware newspaper, he is going around saying things, part of which people know are true, but the other politicians aren't talking about. He is praising George Wallace. He says that's the secret of his success. Also, he says that Biden reminds them that former Alabama Governor George Wallace praised him as one of the outstanding young politicians in America. Joe Biden thinks that's a great stamp of approval to have back in 1987. Also this, campaigning in Alabama in April, Biden talked of his sympathy for the South, bragged of an award he received from George Wallace in 1973, and said, we Delawareans were on the South side in the Civil War. How about that? This guy does not vet well. And they should have done this like we did during the campaign. But here we are.
I mean, you cannot write this stuff, folks. You cannot invent this level of hypocrisy. And the way Joe Biden just casually does it over and over again, accusing people of the stuff that he himself is most guilty of, is unbelievable. I don't even think he realizes that he's doing it. He seems to have no awareness whatsoever. He probably can't even remember 5 seconds ago, let alone what happened during the 1970s and the 1980s. But over and over and over again, Joe Biden gets caught out being a massive liar and a hypocrite. He claims that he got arrested with Nelson Mandela. He claims that he even marched during the Civil Rights Movement. But of course, there's the clip from the 1980s that we continue to circulate of Joe Biden admitting that he was not an activist and he was not on the streets of Selma. He seems to market himself as some sort of civil rights hero. And of course, the infamous quote,
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
If you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. And what a dilemma that puts black voters in. Apparently, if you don't vote for Joe Biden, then you ain't black. The only way to preserve your blackness, do the right thing for the African American community, is to vote for racist Joe Biden, who has a connection to all of these segregationists and racists from the past. And you might even argue that Joe himself is, of course, also a segregationist. Kamala Harris, during the nomination process, certainly seemed to think so. Cory Booker even calling Joe Biden the architect of mass incarceration for being one of the key writers of the 1994 crime bill. Joe Biden being responsible as well for dubbing black youth as, quote, super predators, the infamous Joe Biden quote of saying he doesn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle, and now his connection to George Wallace, and then of course even beyond that, his connection even into the 2000s to once again another avowed racist, Robert Byrd, a man he seemed to have a very close connection to, a man that he even eulogized at his funeral. Vice President Biden eulogizes Senator Byrd. But don't worry folks, Reuters comes with the fact check. Robert Byrd, eulogized by Joe Biden at funeral, was not a KKK Grand Wizard, which of course is so disingenuous. I mean, sure, maybe he might have not been a KKK Grand Wizard, but he certainly had KKK roots, and he certainly, at least in his earlier political years, was a segregationist. Whether he changed or not profoundly deep inside of him, no one really knows. All we do know is that Joe Biden seems to be connected to all of these figures. Yet somehow Democrats have created this brand that they are somehow the party of civil rights and Republicans are the party of Jim Crow. Another lie, just like Democrats are supposedly the party of the working class and the Republicans are the party of the elite. And the track record of course proves it. Joe Biden making life a whole lot worse for the middle and lower class, and Joe Biden definitely not delivering when it comes to race issues. Name a single accomplishment that he's made. Well, you can't, because there are none. The only focus Democrats seem to have when it comes to race-based politics is on the boogeyman of voting rights, which of course would do nothing but lead to more Democrats getting elected. But how exactly is that positive for the African American community when every single time Democrats are elected into office? Even 8 years of Obama's presidency, what did they achieve when it comes to making life better for minority groups? Donald Trump certainly has a track record of the lowest unemployment rate ever seen, even with blacks and Latinos. Opportunity zones, he was even pushing his platinum plan for Black America. Wage increases, the unemployment gap between whites and blacks was shrinking. With Joe Biden, you are literally seeing the exact opposite. Even Donald Trump securing funding for historically black colleges and universities has been reversed under Joe Biden's administration. And here is where things start to get real grim for the Democrats and Joe Biden. Joe Biden might be campaigning on this idea that Republicans are the party of George Wallace, even though he was a Democrat and seemingly Joe Biden's great friend. They might be campaigning that Republicans are the party of Jim Crow 2.0. But the question is that rhetoric resonating? Well, of course not, because people want real results, not political propaganda and slanderous attacks. This latest Quinnipiac poll, well, the most grim I've ever seen for any sitting Democrat president. Quinnipiac poll, Biden overall approval plummets to 33% and only 25% among independents. Take a look at this. Total overall, 33% approval, 2% Republican support, 75% Democrat support, and 25% approval from independents. But here is where it seriously gets bad. Joe Biden's approval among blacks and Hispanics has also dropped. His approval with black Americans stands at 57%, the lowest I have ever seen any Democrat president, and a drop of over 30% from when he initially took office. 30%. And his approval when it comes to Hispanics is even more abysmal at 28%, 4 points lower than his approval from white voters. It seems as though
You have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
well, that statement didn't exactly age well now, did it? It seems as though people are finally starting to wake up, and calling your political opponents in the opposing political party irredeemable, deplorable racists over and over again is starting to become highly ineffective. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm gonna get back to work though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well folks, it is finally happening. The fearmongers at CNN are finally getting their just due. You know, that clip from Brian Stelter's show with Oliver Darcy the other day really gets put into perspective when newly released data now shows that CNN has lost nearly 90% of their key viewer demographic. The coveted viewer demographic for ads, 18 to 54-year-olds, has shrunk to basically nothing, as CNN is now averaging like 500,000 views per show. I mean, talk about the contrast Joe Rogan is getting 11 million plus from his little rinky-dink studio in Texas, and the entire massive corporate establishment media network CNN is getting less than some independent media YouTubers who are actively being shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm. And so really the question is, why are people tuning out CNN? Why are people tuning out the media in general? What exactly is going on here? And that's exactly what we're going to try to tackle in this video. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. Of course, we're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers, so YouTube can continuously promote Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and the rest of that junk. And now with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, take a look at this. After a year of scandals, viewership at pervert-plagued CNN is now down 90% from 2021. The Gateway Pundit starts off with a picture of CNN's Brian Stelter in his underwear, which is of course the perfect way to start this video. CNN's viewership has plummeted 90% from last year in the critical demographic, in fact. According to a new report by the Daily Mail, CNN averaged 548,000 viewers in the first week of January compared to 2.7 million viewers in the same week of 2021. And that really puts things into perspective. Of course, January 2021 was the time of the Capitol riot, or as these phony left-wing media talking heads claim it, the Capitol insurrection. During the peak of that narrative, they were averaging nearly 3 million viewers. And of course, the network was thriving, doing quite well. A year out, as they continue to peddle this nonsense narrative, and as of course, people start to wake up as to what's really happening here in the politicization of it, a year later as they cover nothing but January 6th, they can't even break 600,000 viewers, let alone 1 million. The network's owners, Jeff Zucker, has been under fire for protecting perverts and the worst human beings of mankind at his company in the last year. CNN has fired Chris Cuomo for misconduct of a certain kind. Anchor Don Lemon is accused of exactly the same thing and is currently being sued. Producer Rick Salibi forced out for soliciting photos of a minor and is under criminal investigation. Producer John Griffin is facing federal crimes involving once again a minor. Jeffrey Zoomin Toobin exposed himself during a virtual meeting with colleagues and then got brought back into the network. Scandal-scarred CNN has seen its viewership nosedive by a staggering 90% both overall and in the critical demographic coveted by advertisers in the first week of the new year as compared to last year. And this is the most important part right over here. CNN also saw an 86% decline in the much desirable 25 to 54 demographic. I said it was the 18 to 54 demographic, so correction, 25 to 54, with a paltry 113,000 tuning in last week compared to the 822,000 CNN averaged a year ago. Folks, this might spell the end of CNN, possibly the only thing that can revitalize or resurrect or defibrillate this network from its inevitable demise. Funnily enough, or ironically enough, is Donald Trump getting back on the campaign trail. But the most important factor here, folks, is that left-wing narratives are crumbling. It's not just January 6th, it's also the left-wing narrative on the COVID-19. We're going on 3 years of nothing but CNN fear-mongering, screaming from the mountaintops, "You're all gonna die!" Every day you tune in on CNN, it's the same chyron, showing all of the statistics of how many people have been lost to the COVID-19, the politicization of it, the restrictions, the increased government control, the mandates. Fear, 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 fear has been peddled non-stop, and it seems as though people are tuning out. People want to get back to living normal life, and of course the narrative that Democrats have been pushing, well, people are starting to realize just how disingenuous it really was since the start. CDC director faces criticism from all sides over a statement that 75% of COVID-19 losses have, quote, at least 4 comorbidities. They've been calling you a conspiracy theorist. They've been saying you're downplaying the COVID-19. You and other Republicans and evil Donald Trump are the reason why we're still in this pandemic. Of course, the politicized nature of it. But now even CNN is starting to wake up and realize we've been way off base since the start, and we've been misleading the public. CNN anchor Jake Tapper calls out CDC for, quote, misleading COVID hospitalizations, and Dr. Sanjay Gupta agrees.
So the hospitals are still stretched thin because of this, so I'm not trying to take away from that. But if 40% in some hospitals, 40% of the people who have COVID don't necessarily have problematic COVID. They're there because they got in a car accident. They're there because, you know, they bumped their head. And they're being included as in the hospital with COVID. That number seems kind of misleading.
Yeah, I agree, Jake. It surprises me that they have not been able to parse out that data more carefully.
Yeah, we're 2 years into this, and we need the clearest picture possible. If somebody's in the hospital with a broken leg and they also have asymptomatic COVID, that should not be counted as hospitalized with COVID, clearly.
Well, I wonder why we're all of a sudden having this moment of enlightenment multiple years later. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that social media and media have been waging an all-out war against anybody who questions any data, or frankly questions anything from any governing body surrounding the illness. Jake Tapper is condemning the misleading information from the CDC when, of course, him and all of the cronies at CNN have been the ones fostering and protecting the precious narrative surrounding the COVID-19 since the start. They're the exact people who have been pushing this fear-mongering narrative, especially related to young children, and have enabled this overreaction from governments that has so deeply negatively impacted society and, of course, children. I mean, some of the headlines today are just scary. Ronald McDonald House to evict families with young children who are unjabbed. With this quote right over here, it's for their health. Ronald McDonald House charity in Canada set to begin evicting cancer-stricken children over their vax status. Oh, it's for their health, folks. Their vax status just isn't up to snuff. They're in serious risk, even though we know the data suggests the exact opposite. It's for their health. We're gonna kick out leukemia patients because it's just that serious. Absolute wackos. Thing is, people are starting to wake up to this stuff. They're starting to wake up to the fact that they have been lied to repeatedly. We even now have this data right over here. Boom. Only 31% of Americans trust megalomaniac Dr. Fauci after his many proven lies on COVID origins and effective treatments. Only a dismal 31% of Americans trust serial liar Tony Fauci, significantly down from previous data. It's been nothing but censorship, fear-mongering, an out-of-controlled narrative monster that has led to such destruction. The media has enabled all of it. Maybe that's why CNN is crumbling. You know, Bill Maher made this point on his show the other day, saying that the Achilles heel of the left right now is identifying issues mostly by what they can feel superior to another person for. And they did the same thing when it comes to the COVID pandemic. Well, they're just so compassionate. They just care so much more about life than you do. You're a monster who's downplaying the whole situation. They've politicized it and used it as a political tool to feel superior, to make themselves feel as society's saviors. But in reality, they have caused so much pain and so much destruction. They've made you poorer. They've absolutely scuffed the housing market, making it so much harder to find an affordable home. They've made literally everything else more expensive. They've absolutely ballooned the nation's debt. They've decimated the middle class, decimated the lower class, expanded the wealth of global billionaires by trillions of dollars, caused harm to people's well-being and especially young children's well-being, their social development, their development in general, academic development especially. People have been denied treatment, both medical and psychological treatment. Overdoses and suicides are up to an astonishing degree. People have been put out of business. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. They've done so much damage just for a precious political narrative. They've skewed the data, they've taken everything to the extreme and refused to meet in the middle, refused to analyze the data properly. They've censored opposing voices because it's frankly the only way that they can protect their narrative. But the beautiful thing is, eventually, the righteous side will have its voice heard and people are finally waking up. And that's a major reason why CNN and left-wing media and left-wing scaremongering media is crumbling, is evaporating, disintegrating before our very eyes. Oliver Darcy said it best.
A lot of the media does seem, when I look at it and then travel the country, to be very out of touch with people. I mean, if you travel the country, people are not really living in the same bubble that it seems that most of the media is messaging toward.
People aren't living in this media manufactured fear-mongering bubble. People just want to get back to normal life. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm gonna get back to work though. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to Liberal Hive Mind, a channel fully focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. See, this is exactly what I'm saying when I'm always talking about accountability these days. There needs to be accountability for the Biden administration, for the DNC, Hillary Clinton, and all of the corrupt actors in Washington and at federal agencies. The way Democrats just get away with this stuff, all these bombshell, massive leaks and huge stories, get completely ignored by the mainstream media, don't even make headlines aren't even part of the daily news cycle, let alone weekly or monthly news cycles, just goes to show how deep the bias is. And every time I make a video on this type of topic, I like to always have a little flashback moment to that incredibly ignorant, and I mean ignorant, Washington Post editorial piece claiming that the media is more unfair to Joe Biden than it was to Donald Trump. When of course if a story like this broke to the media during the Trump administration, it would be wall-to-wall news coverage for months, maybe a year. They'd be continuously bringing it up just like they bring everything else up, and still can't stop covering Donald Trump and all of the nonsense that they've surrounded him with a year after his presidency. But now we have another massive scandal breaking from the Biden administration, and what do you hear? Well, pretty much this. So let me show you guys what's going on here, and then of course let's continue to highlight the absolutely horrible double standard. But before we get into any of it, make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. Still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so breaking. Biden's education secretary asked for the NSBA letter that compared protesting parents to domestic terrorists. There has been speculation about the Biden administration's involvement in this ridiculous gaslighting event to essentially sick the DOJ and the FBI on concerned parents right before the 2021 Virginia election. And what was once speculation turns out that that's exactly what it was. It happened from inside the Biden administration, between the White House and the NSBA, to craft this letter that would essentially justify Merrick Garland to then come out with a public statement about the extremist parent threat at school board meetings that they were now investigating, which of course would then be tied to Trumpism, Republicans, and of course their candidate, Glenn Youngkin, who was running against Terry McAuliffe, and the whole scheme is being exposed now with new leaked emails. The NSBA letter suggested that the Patriot Act be used against parents as concerned mothers and fathers speak out at school board meetings across America on critical race theory in K-12 schools and COOF mandates. The letter was then used by the Biden administration's Department of Justice in creating a memo that directed the FBI to aid local education officials that felt unsafe over the protests. In an email sent on October 5th, NSBA Secretary-Treasurer Christy Sweat wrote that NSBA interim CEO Chip Slavin told the officers he was writing a letter to provide information to the White House from a request by Secretary Cardona. Should this accusation be true, it would reveal that this administration's pretextual war on parents came from the highest levels, PD President Nicole Neely told Fox News. Attorney General Merrick Garland unequivocally stated that he based his memo on the NSBA's letter, which in turn mobilized the FBI and U.S. attorneys. Neely added, if Secretary Cardona was truly involved in this ugly episode, it is a significant breach of public trust, and he should be held accountable. Where is the outrage? Another manufactured political scam by the Democrats, orchestrated at the highest level to demonize, vilify, and legally go after parents, concerned parents of young K-12 children as criminals in order to once again stick some sort of extremist, radical, alt-right, right-winger, fear-mongering label on conservative Americans. Another manufactured Democrat deep state plot exposed, and it seems as though no one even cares. The double standard is just horrendous. Donald Trump gets something wrong in relation to the COOF pandemic, and he's responsible for hundreds of thousands of lives lost. He's literally got blood on his hands. Justice Sotomayor pushes out absolutely hysterical misinformation. And well, I guess, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Mistakes are mistakes. The View co-host gives SCOTUS Justice Sotomayor a pass for wildly incorrect COOF claims. Quote, I just want to reframe this. White House declines to call out COOF-19 misinformation from the Supreme Court. The White House twice declined to weigh in on COOF-19 misinformation from liberal justices of the Supreme Court in oral arguments over the administration's jab mandate.
You guys have been very aggressive countering COVID misinformation. So what do you guys think about COVID misinformation coming from the Supreme Court and Sonia Sotomayor's false claim that over 100,000 children are in serious condition, many on ventilators?
Well, I'm not going to speak to Supreme Court arguments or statements made in those arguments, but I will tell you that what is at stake here is our effort to protect health workers and, most importantly, protect patients with the CMS rule, and also to make workplaces safer with the OSHA rule, which we have confidence in our legal argument for. So I will leave it to them to decide, but that's what's being argued now. Go ahead.
About getting ahead of the president before major speeches.
It's okay when lefties do it. It's not a scandal. It's not a crisis if it happens under a Democrat administration. But of course, the same standard doesn't apply the other way around. Democrats seem to operate with a permanent advantage in these cases. They could attempt a coup to try to unseat a duly elected president. Without any repercussions whatsoever, they can falsify evidence or manufacture scenarios in order to use federal agencies to go after their political opponents. And nobody even bats an eye. They can lie and lie and lie and lie some more, and nobody really holds them accountable. Their scandals pretty much go unreported. The media plays defense for them. Big tech companies censor information that could be harmful to the Democrat brand. And somehow, despite all of that, they're still losing. It's absolutely astonishing. And we are to believe that the media is much more unfair to Joe Biden than it was to Donald Trump. Through some ridiculous, indefensible study, like I always say, give me a break. The media is so corrupt, so one-sided, that even during Joe Biden's disastrous first year in office, plagued by scandal and plagued by crisis, MSNBC host Nicole Wallace still talked about Donald Trump 2.5 times more than Joe Biden in 2021. It's a horrendous double standard that's multifaceted. It's not just the White House, it's not just politicians, it's media figures in the news, figures in Hollywood, corporate figures, and all the way down to the average Twitter user and the average Democrat voter, who the rules don't seem to apply to. Democrats call for violence, incite riots, use absolutely horrible, bigoted rhetoric, and seem to face no consequences. Right-wingers merely want to advocate for their young children's education. Then they have a Joe Biden White House plot put together to label them as extremists and domestic terrorists, to then sick the FBI on them like a bunch of rabid dogs. And we're supposed to believe that this is just okay and it's normal politics as normal. It's not. Well, it's Democrat politics as normal, but it's absolutely reprehensible and it should be condemned. Totally. This is a massive bombshell breaking story, and there's like 5 online outlets that are covering it, and barely any independent media figures who even notice that it exists. It's absolutely twisted, folks. But again, not surprising whatsoever. That's what I got for you guys though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. We are still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I'm gonna get back to work though. Like usual, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, here we go, folks. Joe Biden makes another public appearance, and what an absolute disgrace this president continues to be. Joe Biden is gearing up to help turn the political tides headed into 2022. And of course, the Democrat focus, as we already know, isn't to build a platform based on policy. It's to fearmonger about January 6th, and of course, the most important thing, the key to Democrat victory, change the rules of the election, pass H.R. 1, and give themselves an unfair advantage. And so Joe Biden heads to Georgia so he can continue his scaremongering campaign of how Georgia's new election integrity law is tantamount to Jim Crow 2.0. But in normal Joe Biden fashion, he ends up saying a bunch of nonsense, gets absolutely blasted for it, and has multiple embarrassing moments, and in the end, people aren't focused on Joe Biden's message, that Republicans are basically the Ku Klux Klan. People are more focused on Ben Shapiro calling the president a pathetic dotard after Joe Biden makes one of the most ridiculous comparisons ever. And of course, people are more focused on Stacey Abrams essentially ghosting the president, not even showing up, and Georgia's voting rights coalitions telling Joe Biden to stay home. Another disaster to add to the books. And of course, I'm going to update you guys on the complete disaster that was Joe Biden's Georgia trip. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. And with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. All right, folks, take a look at this. Ben Shapiro calls Joe Biden a pathetic dotard for invoking George Wallace during, quote, voting rights speech. Essentially, Joe Biden said this:
How do you want to be remembered? At consequential moments in history, they present a choice. Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? This is the moment to decide, to defend our elections, to defend our democracy.
And Ben Shapiro had a very strong response. Absolutely vile nonsense from a pathetic dotard. And while Ben Shapiro's response was strong, he was certainly not wrong. In fact, I'd say totally justified and a very accurate description. Here we go again with Joe Biden invoking his Jim Crow 2.0 comparison. Nancy Pelosi a couple days ago stating that Republicans who support voter IDs and oppose mass mail-in ballots and Dropboxes are somehow January 6th insurrectionists. And Joe Biden follows it up and adds another layer that not only are Republicans who take this stance trying to enact Jim Crow 2.0, but that they're on the side of Jefferson Davis and Bull Connor and George Wallace, while the Democrats, of course, are the superheroes on the side of Abraham Lincoln, John Lewis, and Dr. King. An absolutely disgusting comparison. It started off with Democrats crying racism. Anybody they disagree with, anytime their worldview is challenged, well, you're just a racist, was generally the go-to argument. And now Joe Biden has taken that and amplified it exponentially to make this despicable comparison. And by the way, this is the president who's supposed to unite the nation and be a president both for Democrats and Republicans. And now he's literally saying that you are on the side of past American segregationist figures. Now, I have words to describe Joe Biden, but I'll hold it back. Although one thing that I do have to say, one hypocrisy that must be pointed out, Joe Biden claims that Republicans are akin to George Wallace. There is a little level of irony considering, well, George Wallace was a member of the Democrat Party. And the only person who has any connection to any of this stuff is probably Joe Biden himself with his very strong relationship with Robert Byrd. This rhetoric from Democrats is truly out of control, but if you really think about it, I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know about you guys, but I keep comparing this stuff to crying wolf. Democrats cried wolf about Russia for years upon years. Now with this whole insurrection nonsense, the way they attacked Donald Trump and called him a racist for years, they are diluting the definition of these words, and their slanderous accusatory tone that continues on over these years is getting more and more watered down, and people are taking it less and less seriously. There is no way that this leads to any legislative victory. There's no way that Joe Biden traveling to Georgia and comparing Republicans to segregationists is going to somehow magically revoke the Georgia law or get Senator Joe Manchin to side with the rest of Democrats and vote for H.R. 1. And there's certainly no way that this is convincing Americans that they need to vote for the Democrat Party, because people are just not buying it anymore. A whole load of nonsense. It's such a last act of desperation. Democrats know they can't win on the merits, so they will continue on, just trying, regardless of how hopeless it is, just clawing at the wall, punching into a brick wall, hoping to somehow change the rules of the election at the 11th hour, because they know it's their only chance at victory. And it's the only thing to explain this crazy rhetoric and this crazy political stance that we know the American people do not support. When you go issue by issue covering all of these election integrity bills, especially when it comes to voter ID, it's pretty much unanimous. The American people support basic election security measures, especially Republicans and independents. And Black and Latino voters do not think that voter ID is racist. In fact, they support it in supermajority numbers. Yet the Democrats continue to take this ridiculous stance. And now they're even going as far to say that anybody who supports these election security measures, well, you're basically akin to George Wallace. Absolutely vile, filthy rhetoric. They wouldn't be doing this if they weren't desperate, if they weren't failing and flailing. Joe Biden is failing to such an incredible degree that there's this new phenomenon that seems to be springing up, this phenomenon of social distancing. And now, of course, you're saying, well, we've been dealing with social distancing and the rest of this nonsense related to the coup for 2 years now. What do you mean it's a new phenomenon? Well, I don't mean that kind of social distancing. I mean social distancing, political social distancing from Joe Biden himself. We all remember in the state of Virginia, as Terry McAuliffe said, that he didn't want to associate himself with Joe Biden because Joe Biden was deeply unpopular.
But we got to get Democrats out to vote. We are facing a lot of headwinds from Washington. As you know, the president is unpopular today, unfortunately, here in Virginia, so we have got to plow through.
Well, now as Joe Biden goes to the state of Georgia to push his Georgia election integrity law Jim Crow 2.0 rhetoric, well, even Georgia's voting rights coalitions publicly stated that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden should stay home, with even, in quotation marks, voting rights activist Stacey Abrams bailing on attending Joe Biden's voting rights speech in Georgia. Again, not a winning message, and not a winning look either. And of course, outside of all of that, it wasn't a good look once again because Joe Biden continues to repeat the same gaffes over and over again. This wasn't more proof for his cognitive decline and his current state of dementia. The way he just makes the same mistakes over and over and over again without the ability to correct himself, as he of course once again pushes the same phony lie that's been fact-checked and debunked a million times. Watch Joe Biden suggest to black students that he was arrested during civil rights struggle.
I did not walk in the shoes of generations of students who walked these grounds, but I walked other grounds because I'm so damn old I was there as well. Seems like yesterday the first time I got arrested anyway.
But of course we know that to not be true, considering
I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else.
And then of course in proper Joe Biden fashion, well, he did this one again.
Last week, President Harris and I stood in the United States Capitol.
He called Kamala Harris president once again, which we could just add to the list.
President Harris.
And so another disastrous public event from Joe Biden. He should have heeded the warning from Georgia's voting rights activist groups, and he should have just stayed home. The phenomenon of Joe Biden ruining absolutely everything he touches, well, it continues to be true. That's what I got for you guys. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We're still shadow banned by the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. I gotta get back to work though. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Alright guys, so as we have been saying, as I've dubbed it, 2022 has to be the year of accountability. In reality, it's 2023. The 2022 elections will happen late in 2022, and then the final 2 years of Joe Biden's presidency. If all goes according to plan and if things continue at the rate they're going right now, it should be a clean sweep for the Republicans in the House and frankly in the Senate as well. A strong Republican majority in Washington, omitting the presidency, and it's time for accountability. But here's the thing, that notion of accountability has to be multifaceted. It can't just be accountability for the Democrats, it needs to be accountability for Republican leaders who are in those positions to represent the will of the voters. Too long have rhino establishment neocon conservatives talked a big talk, but when it really comes down to walking that talk, they are nowhere to be seen. And of course, my go-to example is Ted Cruz every single time. He's great at pep rallies, great at strongly worded messages, but can somebody please tell me one thing that Ted Cruz has legitimately accomplished over the last couple of years? Well, the answer is pretty much nothing. And so it is time to hold Republicans accountable, not to repeat the same nonsense of 2017 during Donald Trump's first year in office. 2 years wasted by neocon conservatives doing nothing but obstructing the will of their party's voters. And so of course we're talking about House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who's promising everything under the sun right now. He's sounding pretty base, but of course, considering who Kevin McCarthy is and his Washington ties, his track record, let's take it all with a grain of salt. So let's try to remain positive and talk about what exactly needs to happen. Let's talk about the promises, and let's talk about holding these leaders accountable to make sure they deliver on what they get elected on. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible, and with that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so Kevin McCarthy is coming in swinging, and for the most part, I like what he's saying. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but I like what he's saying. Exclusive, Kevin McCarthy plans to strip Ilhan Omar off Foreign Affairs, Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff off Intelligence Committee.
The Democrats have created a new thing where they're picking and choosing who could be on committee. Never in the history have you had the majority tell the minority who could be on committee, but this new standard, which these Democrats have voted for, if Eric Swalwell cannot get a security clearance in the private sector, there's no reason why he should be given one to be on Intel or Homeland Security. So he will not be serving there.
So you're going to, if you're the Speaker of the House, you're going to remove him from those committees?
Ilhan Omar should not be serving on Foreign Affairs.
What about any committees for Ilhan Omar?
You know, this is a new level of what the Democrats have gone. You look at Adam Schiff. He should not be serving on Intel when he has openly, knowingly now used a fake dossier, lied to the American public in the process, and doesn't doesn't have any ill will, says he wants to continue to do it.
And now this is long overdue. Now the Ilhan Omar thing, I mean, just based on her anti-American rhetoric and some of the inflammatory stuff that she says, absolutely she should be stripped of her committee position. But more importantly than Ilhan Omar, Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff getting booted off the Intelligence Committee is long overdue. Adam Schiff has absolutely no integrity left, and you know, because he acts as if he's got no integrity left to lose. The guy's the most partisan, vile, vindictive, corrosive, political swamp creature I have ever seen. Every single thing. The man who has been pushing conspiracy theories, debunked dossiers, salacious information, uncorroborated, unverified. Knowingly, of course, he knew was all, but a man who did media tours for years pretending as if there was there, more than circumstantial evidence Adam Schiff, corrupt liar Adam Schiff, should not be anywhere near the Intelligence Committee, let alone the chairman. A man who on 2 occasions falsified evidence on the record on the House floor is the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. That must be rectified immediately, day one. And of course, following with Eric Fang Swalwell, another thing that must be done day one. A guy who was so easily compromised by a literal Chinese spy agent had a relationship with this individual for multiple years. Who knows what information she was able to obtain? Has absolutely no place on the Intelligence Committee, let alone a place in the US Congress. And again, the same nonsense. Eric Swalwell being a go-to figure for 4 years, pushing Russia conspiracy nonsense. All of it turning out to be totally salacious, false, a political malignant cancer that divided the American public and convinced millions of Americans that their president was a Russian asset, a Manchurian candidate. These people need to go pronto, and Kevin McCarthy needs to make it happen immediately. It's time to rectify the partisanship that has corrupted House committees. I mean, even CNN's Dana Bash admits that to be true. CNN's Dana Bash claims that Kevin McCarthy is right, that Democrats have changed the standard to majority deciding who can be on committees.
He's right to a certain extent, except for a really important caveat here, Aaron, and that is the reason Democrats did what they did is because, historically speaking, each party handles its own when it comes to the committees. They reprimand and punish their own when need be. And in this case, Kevin McCarthy didn't do it. If you go back in time, he did it with Steve King, when Steve King made a series of racially insensitive remarks, but he didn't do it for this crowd, and that is the reason Democrats say they acted. And it's not as if they did it in a vacuum.
And of course, we're seeing the exact same thing with Nancy Pelosi's January 6th or 1/6 commission. Totally partisan in nature, Nancy Pelosi claims that it's not partisan. She brought on 2 Republicans, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, who are certainly no Republicans. An absolute partisan sham, a witch hunt, and something that needs to be rectified. And of course, there's 2 paths that can be taken. What some might say is the high road, Republicans being fair and assigning true bipartisan roles, allowing both sides proper representation, or more of a revenge tactic where the Democrats set that new standard and Republicans give them a taste of their medicine and put them on the defensive as new commissions and new committees spring up to hold these corrupt Democrats accountable for the multitude of scandals over the last half a decade. I don't know which one you guys prefer, but honestly, at this point, either. After the absolute corrupt partisanship that we have seen from the Democrats over the last couple of years, who knows if things can ever go back to normal after the Democrats used impeachment as a political tool to unseat a duly elected president based on hearsay, nonsense, and phony evidence. Who's to say impeachment will ever go back to a last resort option that is used properly? Chances are impeachments will be used more as a partisan tool going forward, and you have the Democrats to thank for that one. Let's go back on this key promise from Kevin McCarthy to strip Democrats from their committee slots if the GOP wins the House in 2022, because our 2 favorite figures, Eric Swalwell and Adam Schiff, have actually responded. Representative Eric Swalwell retweets the Hill reporting on it and writes, "McCarthy is targeting me for one reason. I'm effective."
The life shall bring victory.
He wants to carry water, and sort starburst for Trump's big lie and not be called out. He's projecting onto me because he's incapable of facing down the Ku Klux Klan elements in his caucus. If he thinks he's silencing me, he's not. And the greatest joke of the year goes to none other than Eric Swalwell, who claims that he's effective, and that's why Eric Swalwell is going after him, not because he's an absolutely corrupt swamp creature who was so easily manipulated and corrupted by a Chinese agent. He claims it's just because he's effective. And let me ask you one thing, can anybody, and I mean literally anybody, even a Democrat, name a single thing, a single accomplishment that can be directly attributed to Eric Swalwell? The guy is nothing but a political puppet to push partisan talking points, partisan hoaxes, and partisan vitriol, just like claiming there's Ku Klux Klan elements in the Republican caucus. The guy is an absolute joke. Effective. That's the funniest thing I've heard all year. You'll notice in a lot of my most recent videos, I keep saying it's the whatever I've heard all year, which has a much more literal connotation nowadays, considering 2022 just started, and this is definitely the funniest thing that I have heard all year. Adam Schiff, of course, being the grifter that he is, fundraises off of Breitbart interview with Kevin McCarthy and attacks Kevin McCarthy as being a Trump puppet. That's the only reason he's going after Adam Schiff, despite the fact Adam Schiff is one of the most corrupt people in Washington. And then let's move on to the final thing that Kevin McCarthy promised. And this is probably one of the most important, at least maybe from my personal perspective. I might be a little bit biased. Exclusive Kevin McCarthy on Big Tech. GOP task forces developing legislative solutions to ensure freedom of speech. Of course, on Big Tech. And now this is something that I am absolutely so sick of, all the empty platitudes and promises. And if Republicans are to get a strong majority in the House and in the Senate, this is something that must be done. Securing basic freedom of expression and protection from the horrible bias from massive tech companies is something that needs to be done immediately. The private company argument doesn't stand up to scrutiny when it comes to the massive tech oligarchies that reign the flow of information in modern day society. They're not private companies. They've become utilities at this point. It's where political movements are created. It's where politicians campaign and create their brand. And we have these massive companies exiling conservative figures from the town square. That's a constitutional issue that can't be justified by, oh, it's a free company, deal with it, buddy. If you say that, well then you're a insert expletive word here. I've said it from the start, folks. Your speech online should be protected by the law. Unless you are doing something provably illegal, it should be illegal for companies to deplatform you or deperson you, and the GOP need to get on that stat. And so this is what I mean by accountability. Accountability for the tech oligarchs. Accountability for the Democrat shadow Russian coup that plagued the nation for 4 years. Accountability for what happened on January 6th. Accountability for what's been going on at the CIA and the FBI. And most importantly, the only way any of that happens is if Republican elected officials are held accountable by you. In other words, drain the swamp. That's what I got for you guys, though. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share it as much as possible. I'm going to get back to work, though. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. This is going to destroy the Democrats in 2022 and frankly beyond, unless they fix this very major glaring problem which they seem to be completely delusional about. They are done, and I don't mean just done, I mean like as a political party, they're done. The warning signs are there. It's the reason they lost to a reality TV star billionaire in 2016. You think that'd be a wake-up call? You think despite all the factors in 2020, winning by 40,000 votes would be a wake-up call, would also be a wake-up call. You think that the state of Virginia, flipping red as well as so many different voter demographics following suit, would start ringing alarm bells at the Democrat headquarters. But it seems as though they are sleeping at the wheel, both figuratively and also literally, considering Joe Biden. But they have yet to wake up. Democrats don't realize that they are completely out of touch with regular Americans. They don't realize that they're losing Latinos, losing African American voters, and of course, most importantly, losing the white working class. And I know that they must not realize it because they continue to make matters worse for themselves. And that's exactly what I want to show you guys for this video. I have a little clip from Joe Biden's most recent event that's essentially going to sum it all up and show you exactly why the Democrats are screwed. And I mean royally screwed. But of course, before we get into any of it, please make sure to leave a like, a comment, subscribe, share the video as much as possible. We are still will shadow ban the YouTube algorithm, hidden from non-subscribed viewers. With that out of the way, let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so first off, Bernie Sanders just did an interview with the UK's The Guardian. The headline shows, Bernie Sanders says Democrats are failing. Quote, the party has turned its back on the working class. Senator Bernie Sanders called on Democrats to make a major course correction that focuses on fighting for America's working class and standing up to powerful corporate interests. Like that's ever gonna happen, because the Democrats' legislative agenda is stalled and their party faces tough prospects in this November's election. Bernie Sanders stated, it is no great secret that the Republican Party is winning more and more support from working people, Sanders said. It's not because the Republican Party has anything to say to them. It's because in too many ways the Democratic Party has turned its back on the working class. And now we'll address some of Bernie Sanders' statements probably later, but I just want to set the baseline here, because the overarching element of what Bernie Sanders is preaching here is correct. Let's once again play the game of contrast. Democrats, and Joe Biden specifically, have marketed themselves as the party of the working class, the party for the little guy. Well, if that's true, if Joe Biden is a president for the working class, would a Democrat president who claims to represent you ever say something as disgusting as this?
I've been doing this a long time. But here's the way to look at it. Car prices are too high right now. There are two solutions. You increase the supply of cars by making more of them, or you reduce demand for cars by making Americans poorer. That's the choice.
So Joe Biden on rising car prices says you can reduce the demand for cars by making Americans poorer. The question is, did Joe Biden just say the ugly